22 meeting of the Mental Health SF Implementation Working Group. Jessica, would you please call us to order?
Yes, thank you all for your patience. I am working on this. Thank you so much. Okay. My apologies. This worked so well when I practiced.
Always the dress rehearsal works better.
Thank you so much. A reminder, members who enter the meeting by phone need to connect their phone to WebEx audio when they join the meeting. If you are not sure how to do so, please use the chat to connect to the IT host who will help you to do so. This meeting is being held by WebEx pursuant to the governor's executive orders and mayoral emergency proclamation suspending and modifying requirements for in-person meetings. During the coronavirus disease emergency, COVID-19, this committee will convene remotely until the committee is legally authorized to meet in person. Public comment will be available on each item on this agenda. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. Instructions for participation will be shared during the sections dedicated to public comment. Per public comment rules, the IWG does not directly respond to live public questions or comments, but takes public input into account and as part of the official meeting record. Roll call will now be taken to establish quorum. Upon your name being called, please unmute yourself and respond with here or present. Member Eisen?
Present.
Member Fields?
Present.
Member Gonzalez will be absent today. Member Hammer?
Present.
Chair Lassar?
Present.
Member Lipton?
Present.
Member McGuigan?
Present.
Member Patterson? Okay, I believe he is absent. Member Salinas?
Present.
Member Shorts? Okay. Member Wong?
Present.
I believe Member Short is not here. Let me check the attendee list to make sure they are not in there. Okay, they are not, so I will mark them as absent.
Jessica,
Yes.
I see Member Short's name.
Oh,
Member Short, are you able to unmute yourself?
Looks like it.
Okay.
my apologies, Member Short.
Oh, no. I was having technical stuff trying to get on, so my apologies too.
Thank you. And we have, give me a second to count these members. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 9 members present. Just to confirm, Member Gonzalez had already stated that she would be out, and Member Patterson is absent. Okay, so we have quorum. Okay. Per the IWG bylaws, the IWG must vote to excuse an absent member from a working group meeting. Okay. If the working group does not take such a vote at the meeting or at a previous meeting, then the minutes shall note that the absence is unexcused. Any member who misses 3 regular meetings of the working group within a 12-month period without express approval of the working group at or before each missed meeting will be deemed to have resigned from the working group 10 days after the 3rd unapproved absence. Member Gonzalez communicated to the planning team that she will be absent at today's meeting. I believe Member Patterson is also absent at today's meeting. Jen, are there any more members who are absent today that I may have missed?
Nope, you got it. Thanks, Jessica.
Okay, thank you. And Chair Lassar, would you like to open discussion to these absences?
Yes, I just sent a text again to Jamil. I believe he might be traveling. So I will try to figure out what's going on there. If we can table this and come back to it as the last item of business, then I can know for sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll be tabling this item. And okay, and I'll pass it back to Chair Lasar. Thank you, everyone.
Chair Lasar, would you like to read the goals for today?
Yes, sorry, I'm here. It was just getting to the right screen. My apologies. Um, today we have three goals. Excuse me. Please note we have turned off the chat function for all panelists and the public due to issues of accessibility. For added comments, questions, or concerns, please email mental health SF email. Remember to take bio breaks as needed. We have a bio break scheduled, but please take care of yourself. We need quorum to move the meeting forward. Just make sure you're not all stepping out at the same time. The three goals today: receive an update on the Office of Coordinated Care, review the upcoming progress report and recommendation report, discuss community engagement opportunities. Next slide. Just a reminder overhead of where we are and what we are here to accomplish. The charge of this work group is to advise on the design, outcomes, and effectiveness of mental health SF to ensure its successful implementation of the ordinance domains. Today we have speakers whom we have heard from before who are directly engaged in designing and implementing mental health SF domains. Next slide. We are now moving on to discussion item number 1 related to the remote meetings. I will hand it to you, Jessica.
All right, and I believe this is Jen. Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah. So this is another one of those things that we need to do as far as our startup, and that is to talk about the state and local requirements as authorized by the California Government Code Section 54953E and the Mayor's 45th supplement to her February 25th, 2020. Can you believe that 2020 emergency proclamation? This meeting will be held remotely without providing a physical location. The state requires that we submit what they refer to as findings every month, and these findings are that the IWG as a public body has reviewed the teleconferencing meeting status in relation to the COVID state of emergency, and the formal requirements titled Resolution Making Findings for Teleconference Meetings are posted on the brand new IWG website. Go check it out. By state requirement, we must review and record our findings every 30 days. So I'm going to read the two primary resolutions that we're going to be taking a roll call vote on. The resolutions are that the state of California and the city remain in a state of emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic. At this meeting, the IWG has considered the circumstances of the state of emergency, and 2, as described above, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, conducting meetings of this body and its discussion groups in person would present imminent risks to the safety of attendees, and the state of emergency continues to directly impact the ability of members to safely meet in person. So are there any questions about the resolution, its purpose, or its findings? Okay. Chair Lasar, are you ready to open the floor to public comment?
Yes, please.
Right. Jessica, if you could take away public comment.
Thank you, Jen. Members of the public who wish to provide public comments on this item should call 415-655-0001, access code 2487-225-6148, then pound and then pound again. If you haven't already done so, please dial *3 to line up to speak. A system prompt will indicate you have raised your hand. Please wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted, and you may begin your comments. Please note that you will have 3 minutes. I'm currently checking to see if there are any callers in the queue. If you have not already done so, please press *3 to be added to the queue. For those already on hold, please continue to wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted. Okay. So we will give it a minute or so just to give everybody an opportunity to find their *3 keys. And if we don't have anybody, we'll move to the next to vote. Okay, we only have 3 people in the attendees list, and I'm not seeing anything, so we will move on since there are no callers in the queue. We will now vote that we understand and submit to the state the finding that will not meet in person for the next 30 days. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, that was Member Fields who moved it and Member Eisen who seconded. I will now call roll call and ask each member to vote yes or no to approve the remote findings. Member Eisen?
Yes. Yes.
Member Fields?
Yes.
Member Gonzalez is absent. Member Hammer?
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Lassar?
Yes.
Member Lipton?
Yes.
Member McGuigan?
Yes.
Member Patterson is still absent, I believe. Member Salinas?
Yes.
Member Shorts?
Yes.
Member Wong?
Yes.
Okay. We have 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9. We have 9 yeses, 0 nos. We have a majority to approve the remote findings. I will now pass it on to Chair Lassar.
Thank you. We will now move to discussion item number 2, approval of the August 2022 IWG meeting minutes. These minutes are posted on the IWG website. Are there any changes to the minutes as posted on the IWG website? Looking for any hands. Not seeing any hands from colleagues. Jessica, we can move then to the public comment.
Thank you. Members of the public who wish to provide public comment on this item should call 415-655-0001, access code 2487225-6148, then pound and then pound again. If you haven't already done so, please dial *3 to line up to speak. A system prompt will indicate you have raised your hand. Please wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted and you may begin your comments. Please note that you will have 3 minutes. So I am currently checking to see if there are any callers in the queue. If you have not already done so, please press *3 to be added to the queue. For those already on hold, please continue to wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted. So again, we'll give folks a few seconds, a little bit more time to try to unmute. And if there are no callers in the queue, we'll move on to the next item. Thank you everybody for your patience.
IWG members, for those of you who are feeling itchy during these silences, the reason that we give this time is because we received feedback that we need to give more time and sufficient time for members of the public. So if it's feeling like it's quiet and you have those itchy fingers, just, I guess, sit on your fingers.
Okay, and we actually have the same 3 people from earlier, and I'm not seeing anything. So there are no callers in the queue. And public comment is now closed. Okay, we will now vote to approve the August 2022 meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Member
second.
Salinas. My apologies. Who was?
Hammer.
Oh, thank you, Member Hammer. I will now call roll call and ask each member to vote yes or no to approve the August meeting minutes. Member Eisen,
Yes.
Member Fields,
Yes.
Member Gonzalez is absent today. Member Hammer, Chair Lassar,
Yes.
Member Lipton,
Yes.
Member McGuigan,
Yes.
Member Patterson is still absent, I believe. Member Salinas.
Yes.
Thank you. Member Short,
Yes.
Member Wong.
Yes.
Okay, so we have 9 yeses and 0 nos. We have a majority to approve the August 2022 meeting minutes, and I will now pass it on to Chair Lassar.
Thank you. We are now moving on to discussion item 3 related to the IWG annual progress report. Next slide. The October progress report is very similar in structure and content to last year's progress report, if you recall, while adding some nuances to the recommendations process to incorporate the introduction of rapid and other types of review that differ than our typical process. And then this is, again, an annual report. Next slide. I'm not allowed to progress on my slides. Here we go. Okay, so Jen, are we opening this up? I don't have any notes on what's happening here.
Yes, apologies for that. This is moving to Oksana to present about
Great.
the reports. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Oksana. And
Thanks for
thank you,
teeing us
Jen.
up, Chair Lassar. Good morning, everyone. My name is Oksana Sherba. I'm with the Controller's Office. I'm often behind the scenes, kind of helping with meeting facilitation, agendizing, and what have you, and on the city planning team. So it's nice to see you all on camera this morning. And just to kind of, again, frame us up a little bit, Monique started talking about this, but the purpose of this agenda item is really to talk about the 2 fall reports that are coming up, one in October and one in December. And we're going to be focusing a little bit on the objectives and the structure of the 2 reports. And we're also going to talk about opportunities for feedback from you all, particularly for the December implementation report. So you all should have received a draft of the October progress report yesterday via email. No expectations to have already reviewed that, but that's in your inboxes now. And just to, again, kind of give you all a reminder, the legislation tasks the IWG with submitting this report annually to the Board of Supervisors, the Mayor, and the Director of Health. As you'll see, the ordinance itself, if you can just take a moment to read the language, it's pretty vague on the specifics of the report. So the city planning team, in collaboration with Chair Lassar and with all of your input, have landed on kind of the following form and function. And so one of the kind of key objectives we thought would be important to share out with stakeholders was to remind stakeholders of kind of the core elements of the IWG. And that includes sections that cover the IWG mandate, the kind of different components of the mental health SF legislation, the domains as we call them, as well as their evolution. We also have a section on the overview of the Prop C budget, as well as its allocations towards mental health SF by fiscal year. So you'll see that in the progress report as well. And finally, we have included in the report sort of the IWG approach to recommendations. So this is kind of to date what have been the processes so far. That's sort of that full recommendation cycle that you all have grown accustomed to of 3 to 4 months deliberating, getting briefings, starting to work through draft recommendations, as well as some of the new approaches that have been introduced, including kind of rapid informal feedback, just kind of other ways of, whiteboarding, other ways that sort of differ than that formal structure than we're used to. And this year's October progress report, again, as Chair Lassar already said, is quite similar to last year's progress report, so nothing should be too surprising to you. Again, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the introduction of new types of feedback where it is necessary given certain domain implementation timelines. But really it should mirror kind of similar to what we talked about last year. So next slide, please. So another key objective of this progress report is to review progress made on domain coverage by the IWG during the current reporting period. So that's from last year's report, October 2021, to this year, and preview what's coming next. And these sections include kind of links to completed recommendations on SF.gov, and that's, as Jen was saying, that's the new site that the IWG website has migrated to. It's also kind of reviewing the domain coverage that's been made in 2022. You all see all the exciting, the D's and U's that are kind of strewn across the calendar. That represents all of the briefings that were given, the sessions of feedback, the recommendation cycles you all went through. So obviously, pretty busy year. And the report also talks about a summary of next steps for the IWG, as well as the year 3 update, which you all can kind of see a preview of in the actual progress report itself. But just to kind of walk you through some of the kind of general pieces of the calendar for 2022, the strategy for 2022 is really kind of going for maximum coverage. We know that there was a particular focus on new beds and facilities this year, which saw significant expansion. And closing out this year and going into the next, DPH will be focusing on bringing back less covered domains to the IWG, such as the Office of Coordinated Care, which is slated to return back in the fall, as well as the Mental Health Service Center. So DPH will be coming back to brief the IWG on the Mental Health Service Center's next steps, following the conclusion of the controller's options analysis. So probably most likely coming back in October and definitely by November. Pending holiday availability. So the group will start that recommendations process pretty soon. And so again, just to kind of re-emphasize with this maximum coverage strategy, it's possible that you all will have weighed in and provided initial recommendations or some type of feedback on all mental health SF domains by end of the calendar year. So really exciting. And again, thank you all for your diligent work on all of this. And in terms of kind of year 3, again, you should expect to hear more program and evaluation briefings from domains that have been operating for a while, like SCIRT, as well as getting quarterly updates on the controller's office wage and staffing analysis and A&E. So these are sort of things to kind of look forward to next year. And hopefully this aligns kind of with your expectations. But again, as I mentioned earlier, if you'd like to read more about what's to come in year 3 in terms of domain coverage, you can absolutely do so in the October progress report. So please review that when you get a chance, which Jen has sent out. So next slide, please. Right, so in terms of next steps, the Controller's Office and DPH has done a review of this progress report draft, and the IWG chair, our fantastic Chair Lassar, is kind of in her court as well to sort of do some review as well. And, we offer you all an opportunity to weigh in as well if you have, strong opinions, questions, any kind of input. We want to make sure that we gather that as well. Ideally, by Wednesday, September 28th. I know that's a bit of a tight timeline, but giving a little bit less runway on this report because, again, it bears a lot of similarity to last year, so it shouldn't be anything too different. But that being said, we absolutely welcome your input if you have any. And our goal is for the city planning team to share and publish this report by this Friday, September 30th. So I know that was a lot, so I'll just pause there to see if you have any questions about any of what I just said about the October progress report, timelines, etc. Now I'm getting those itchy fingers. Okay, if there are no questions, we can move on to the next slide.
One second.
Now going a bit into the December
before you
One
move on-
second, I think somebody is.
Yeah, I know the next slide is on the December report. So can you briefly describe the difference between the two reports? This is the first year I've been on the committee, on the working group. And I want to make sure I understand the difference of what we're reporting in October versus what we're reporting in December.
Yeah, thank you, Member Lipton. So legislatively, the differences are not very obvious in terms of the actual language itself. However, the sort of way that we're trying to differentiate and create structure to the two reports is that the progress report is really meant to just reflect all the domains that the IWG has covered and kind of just the full scope of the recommendations that have been made sort of thus far since the last reporting period. So it's more of just, going domain by domain, what has been covered, where are the kind of stages of progress, as well as kind of those reminders about the frameworks of the IWG. Whereas the December implementation report, which again, I'll go into further, is a one-time report. And this is an opportunity, it has a different sort of mandate, and it asks for the IWG to weigh in on what kind of guarantees successive implementation of the mental health SF. So this kind of provides more leeway, and it's a new report that you all have not worked on yet, that we have not worked on yet. So there's a lot more space to kind of inform the structure as well as the objectives. We have some draft objectives in the work that we'll kind of preview to you all and ask for your opinions on. But the key difference is the progress report is really sort of cut and dry. This is what was covered. Whereas the implementation report is, what are some opportunities where we can identify challenges or opportunities that could be, that could affect or impact the success of mental health SF. So does that answer your question?
Sort of. I mean, which report addresses how well we think the IWG is doing, or more importantly, how mental health SF is doing, responding to the findings that created mental health SF and the general principles or the prioritization, actually the general principles, the so-called 11 principles that govern the design and implementation of mental health SF. In other words, where do we describe whether we think how well mental health SF is actually progressing and doing? And are we responding to some of the issues or the issues that created this program so we can show that there's been progress? Or if there's not progress, where progress has not been met. Something different than the building blocks, but from the standpoint of delivery of services to the individuals who are the subject of mental health FF, who are our key population.
Oksana, I believed it to answer Member Lipton's question. That's really going to come in the December implementation report, because up to now, what we're reporting on is what we've done.
Yeah.
And this would be an opportunity. So if you'd like to make that suggestion, then I'm hearing you would, then we would make that suggestion to our team. So let's hold that in our parking lot team. That's something Member Lipton would definitely like to see for that December implementation report. And I'm sure others of us would as well.
Chair, I concur. That's fine.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure that there's an understanding of what we're doing now versus what we're going to do in the December.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's great. Appreciate that. Okay. Are we ready to move on to the next piece? Oh, Member Hammer, I see your hand.
Yeah,
and I see Member Field's hand now as well.
I just had a quick question. I think I think maybe this clarified, but I just want to make sure. On page 1 of the draft of the progress report that you sent, in the last paragraph there, it says this progress report summarizes their progress building off of work done as of the October 2022 progress report. Is that what it means to say, or should it say work done as of, like, since the October 2021 progress report?
probably since 2021. So thank you for catching that.
Okay.
It's a working draft. But thank you. Good eye.
Member Fields.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to following up on Member Lipton's point. I'm not sure, looking at the grid we have for our future meetings and what's under development, what's, you know, one of the things that we have not had is a open discussion among the members of the IWG that will lead to, I think, the content and validity of the December implementation report. So I would like to ask Carter and company and us as members to make sure that instead of looking at another report from the SCIRT team about how they're doing and another, that we set time aside to discuss in these meetings with the public being able to hear it, what our conclusions are that lead to, I think, a more valid and comprehensive December implementation report in a meeting. I know we can all offer input, but could we set time aside on the agenda, try to have an opportunity for an exchange that doesn't have to include a whiteboard, but is actually a deliberation among people who have dedicated a lot of time and thinking, and I mean in decades before IWG was created, to how we're looking on December about the goals and the intent of mental health SF and where we are in actually moving toward changing the behavioral health system in the direction that that legislation envisions.
Yes, Member Fields, most definitely. We already had this in the planning. So absolutely. We heard you when you asked for this, and I believe Member Lipton also asked for this several meetings ago. So we're just getting ourselves to that point where we can wrap up these other pieces and still can, keep our cycles going and at the same time make space for everything. So hopefully you will see that response. I believe, well, we're in September now, so it would be October or November. So keep posted. I'm looking for any other hands. Seeing none, if we're okay to move back to Oksana, I believe you were about to take to shift us to public comment. Was that where we are?
I still, yeah, thank you, Chair Lassar. I still want to dig a little bit into the December implementation report, and then we can move on to next steps and then public comment. Thank you. And just to kind of bring back to some of the members' concerns and just sort of desire to weigh in, just wanted to reiterate, and we'll talk about this in next steps, that we'll be offering both a discussion group as well as we'll be talking at the next at the October meeting. We'll be bringing back to the full IWG kind of more of a detailed deep dive into the December implementation report, because we have a longer runway for this report, and this is a report that, again, we really want your all input on. So definitely there will be multiple points for feedback. So thank you for raising that. And so just to, again, kind of go back to some of the distinctions between the two reports, again, another kind of legislative reminder for the December implementation report. The legislation says that by no later than June 1st, the implementation working group shall submit to, the stakeholders, same stakeholders as the progress report, recommendations concerning the design of the mental health SF and any steps that may be required to ensure its successful implementation. So as you'll notice, obviously June 1st, 2021 has long passed. And so that deadline has been pushed to December 1st of this year. Just to, again, kind of reflect when the IWG really became operational. And, this is more of a pivotal time where we can kind of reflect on, what might be necessary to ensure successful implementation of mental health SF. And so some of the kind of draft objectives that we developed as the city planning team for the implementation report are, this report might have consolidated recommendations that have been completed so far, including kind of informal feedback that has been provided as well. So, you all have provided input on Mental Health Service Center, on the MINA project. So want to be able to kind of capture all of that rich dialogue that you've been having that hasn't necessarily, again, followed the structure of that typical recommendations process. We also thought that for this report, it would be important to establish a dynamic recommendations process. So, as you've all experienced, you all have submitted formal recommendations to stakeholders on certain domains. And kind of what happens when those formal recommendations are submitted. Are they then reopened? Are they, reworked, iterated upon? Kind of what process can we put in place and formalize that will sort of make sure that these recommendations are iterative and that they're not just static. So that's something that we thought would be important to establish in that implementation report. Another key objective we determined for this report was that DPH was hoping to provide kind of their year 3 vision. So what all is coming down the pike on DPH's end, what kind of domain coverage might the IWG expect, and just sort of from their vantage point, what all, do they think is going to be expanding, sort of, what is the changing landscape of mental health services, and how can we align that to the meeting calendar for IWG to make sure you all are sort of being brought in, at integral moments. And finally, we thought another key objective was to offer suggestions from the IWG, from you all, as well as perhaps the city planning team, and kind of having listened to you all and captured some of your input on where there are opportunities to enhance the success of mental health SF. And so this is where we were hoping to kind of shed some light on some of those kind of larger systemic requests that you've been making. This includes the mental health services mapping, from different kind of aspects. It includes more visibility into the work of other departments like HSH, who we haven't been hearing as much from, as well as other related initiatives, including, the OCO budget. How does your all work align with the budget process? How can we, sort of create more visibility into what all is happening with the OCO budget? And so these are all draft objectives. These are sort of opportunities that we were kind of identifying for this December implementation report, and all open to your all feedback and your suggestions on how to kind of finesse, add to it. So next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, again, this report is a little bit further out, but we will have Harder as well as the city planning team begin drafting the report the week of October 3rd. And, we hope, again, with that added runway of October and November, that we'll be able to garner a lot of your all input through, again, discussion groups, through the October IWG meeting. So we'll definitely be coming back to you with hopes that you all will have some ideas on how to enhance this report and really make it meaningful for the stakeholders that receive it. So I will pause there and ask if you all have any immediate thoughts. Actually, if we could go back to one slide over, just so you all can look at the objectives and see if you have any kind of immediate thoughts on this. How are these landing for you? And just, any kind of quick feedback you might have on that.
I believe Member Fields has his hand up.
Yes, Oksana, I just have a quick question about the constituencies involved. What's the methodology to garner the input and participation of the members of the Board of Supervisors that were an equal partner in developing this initiative? We hear about the health department and the IWG members, but I just want to know what's the process by which the other participant in this vision, the Board of Supervisors, is being pulled into this evaluation process?
That is a good question, Member Fields. I think maybe we can put a pin in that and I can circle back to you. From my understanding, the way that we've engaged in the past historically has been primarily just through awareness. So we share out materials that come from the IWG, we share recommendations as an FYI, and there isn't much, I would say, kind of two-directional feedback. So that's sort of what I think historically has been the case, but I can't say for certain that that's accurate. I've been on the city planning team for 9 months or so, so I'm not totally certain what used to happen in the past, but that's from my vantage point, sort of how we've been engaging with them.
Thank you.
However, Member Fields, we do check in with Supervisor Ronan, and I believe that we have something coming up with her to apprise her and to get feedback. So we will include in that question any of her feedback that we need to make sure to add to the report as well, especially given your comment. That's super helpful. Member Hammer, I see your hand.
Just a quick question. Chair, sorry. Is that meeting with Supervisor Ronan with the whole IWG or just with the chairs?
I believe it's just with the Harder and Company. I've asked to participate as well. We could certainly invite her to this session and see if the calendars line up. I know Tuesdays are usually a big day for them, but we can see if it's possible, if that's a request from the group or from a couple of folks. Is that what?
That wasn't what I was getting at.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I think it's fine to start with that smaller group, but then but that may come up at your meeting with her, is whether she'd like to
Okay.
meet with the whole IWG.
Okay. Great. Okay. Anything else on that? I'm looking for hands. Okay. Back to you, Oksana.
I think we can actually get
Member
ready
Wong
to.
put her hand up.
Oh,
My
thank you,
apologies.
Jessica.
Mhm.
Member Wong?
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm just having a tech problem here. Actually, I think it would be great at some point to invite Supervisor Rowland, since this is actually, I think she had invested into this significant project, and I think maybe before the implementation or somehow, I think it would be great if we can actually, have a presence, since we did all this work and this is, her actual project. And I think it would be great to invite Dr. Ronan. That's my input.
Agreed. Agreed. Thank you. Okay, Oksana.
All right, I think if there are no other questions, we can move on to public comment.
Okay, before I start public comment, my apologies. I just realized I had my camera off. I'm so sorry about that. Thank you for your patience. All right, so we will be moving on to public comments for this item. Members of the public who wish to provide public comment on this item should call 415-655-0001, access code 2487-225-6148, then pound and then pound again. If you haven't already done so, please dial *3 to line up to speak. A system prompt will indicate you have raised your hand. Please wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted and you may begin your comments. Please note that you will have 3 minutes. I'm currently checking to see if there are any callers in the queue. And again, we'll give it a minute for people to be able to raise your hand. Again, if you have not already done so, please press *3 to be added to the queue. For those already on hold, please continue to wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted. And I'm not seeing anything yet, but we will give it a minute or so. Thank you. Okay, we have one caller. Caller, you have been unmuted.
Thank you. My name is Carolyn Kennedy. I'm a resident of San Francisco in District 8. I lead my neighborhood association, and I'm also very active with Rescue SF, which is seeking more effective and compassionate solutions to homelessness. So I'm very interested in the work of this working group. I have to apologize. I don't have the time in my schedule to attend every meeting, but I'm glad to see that there's some very seasoned practitioners on the participant list. And I'd like to echo the comments that Speaker Steve Fields made with respect to really taking a look at where this working group is and what its priorities are and what's going to be most effective in serving the people intended to be served by Mental Health SF. I particularly have concern about those who are homeless and experiencing behavioral health, substance use disorder, or dual diagnosis. We do not have the beds for them. We do not have the residential treatment. We need these desperately. Every day, we all know our residents, our businesses are experiencing, and the people themselves experiencing the mental health disorders and distress are in desperate need of this treatment. I will start reading about what this group has accomplished, but I'm very concerned about what's been going on because we have a paucity of beds and treatment. And I would just ask this group to really, I know you're all dedicated, but to really think about what we need to do going forward. Sometimes we get caught up with what we thought we were going to do in the past. I think the situation here has gotten very grave, and we need to really think about what we're doing and how we're going to best serve this subpopulation as well as the broader population. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. I do not see any other callers in the queue. I will give it a few more seconds and then we can move on to the next item. Okay, there is another caller. You have been unmuted. Caller, I have unmuted you. And as a reminder, there is 3 minutes to give your comments.
Hello?
Hi there, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. My concern is about the fact that so many programs were created and contractors in place, and we don't know anything about the repetition of services that are already in place. I'm concerned that programs that are out there that are already working would have really benefited from support and being included in this whole program, and it looks like we've just created another program to go in on top of one program that already exists. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. As a reminder, the IWG cannot directly respond to comments or questions during the meeting, but we do take all of your comments into consideration and will reflect those in the meeting minutes. I do not see any other callers in the queue. Public comments is now closed. And with that, I will pass it on to Chair Lassar.
Thank you, Jessica. We are moving on to one of our favorite parts, getting to hear from our mental health SF director, Dr. Hillary Cunnins. Dr. Cunnins joins the MHSF working group on a regular basis for updates. We're excited to hear what you have to share today. Dr. Cunnins, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much. I had to join a bit late, so I missed some of the beginning of the meeting, but I will get caught up. Good to see everyone. As you all remember, we started, or I started doing, thanks Chair Lassar, and I'm glad you think it's the favorite part, monthly updates.
Sorry, it's a little hard to hear. I don't know if there's a volume you can put up or.
Let's see. Is this any better?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Let me.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Sorry, member short. And apologies if I'm not able to be heard. So just as a reminder, this is the monthly update that's intended to be a briefer verbal update, so I don't have slides. I wanted to share with the group some of the more recent updates since we last met. First, in terms of MHSF specific work, wanted to share that Soma Rise, which is our drug sobering center, is now operating 24/7 and operating at full capacity, seeing the full complement of 20 plus individuals that they have space for. So this is very good news. As a reminder to the group, I'm not going to walk through our new beds and facilities dashboard, but that is available online at sf.gov. And I invite you all to follow along with those updates, which we try to highlight in these meetings. I now want to turn to additional work that's not specifically under our mental health San Francisco domain plan, but touches a large number of the services that this group and the public is concerned with. That is people experiencing homelessness who also have serious mental illness and or substance use disorders. Many of you know, and we briefed the group some months ago on the state's infrastructure grant funding. There are two paths of funding, the so-called Behavioral Health Continuum Infrastructure Program, BCHIP, and the Community Care Expansion. Both of these provide from the state to the locality with application, capital costs and funding for behavioral health services. There are some nuances there, as you might recall from the briefing. I wanted to share that we have been awarded two of these grants, one $6.8 million for the renovation or help with the renovation of the crisis stabilization unit at 822 Geary, which this group is aware of. We have also received $5.5 million through the community care expansion, the other mechanism to help support preservation of board and care facilities. Those monies come to the county, but then are further distributed to local board and care for capital expansion. Finally, I want to just report out on our the third category of nearly $2 million awarded to crisis care mobile units, which has been, which we, I think, received many months ago to help expand infrastructure and services. In terms of our mobile crisis service, which is primarily responsible to respond to behavioral health crises in homes for both adults and children, with that infrastructure money, as well as some additional grant and local funding, we are able to expand in-person responses to 7 days a week, adding 2 hours on weekdays as well as later on Saturday and Sundays. So this is great. Of note, that service remains available 24/7 for phone consultation. And as I briefed this group already, but just to kind of connect all the dots, the crisis care service also received additional budget this fiscal year to expand crisis response to overnight responses. Right now, the team is still relying on an answering service, which and then gets relayed to a clinical person or a clinician, and then the person gets a call back. So that will go 24/7. We are also working to improve, optimize coordination with the other call lines, including 911, 988, and 311. two other updates that I wanted to share with the group is one, which we're very excited about, is that DPH is launching a training academy in anti-racist and culturally humble clinical practices for which we hope will involve more than 300 or about 300 both staff at DPH and providers in contract with DPH. Our goal is to train clinicians on core skills to provide evidence-informed, anti-racist, and culturally responsive clinical assessment and interventions to clients. Year one will be a series of foundational trainings and consultations, including on constructive conversations on race and racism with clients, anti-racist clinical assessment and diagnosis, cultural adaptation of practices in working with clients who identify as Black, African American, Latina, Latino, Latinx, Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Native American, Alaskan Native. In year two of the two-year program, we will be embarking on training on specific practices to get clinicians to competency to be able to implement. So we're very excited about this program. It is launching soon. And we're happy to give you further, I'm happy to invite someone to give further and more comprehensive information. Finally, I just want to update you all on the series of relevant Board of Supervisor hearings that touch our area. The first is today about the Kaiser mental health workers strike. This Thursday, Supervisor Dorsey has called a hearing on overdose prevention. Supervisor Preston has called a hearing on overdose prevention. And then on October 13th, Supervisor Dorsey has called a hearing on his resolution called SF Recovers. And then on October 27th, there will be a hearing on treatment on demand. I see Member Short shaking her head, so maybe I got the dates wrong. But there's a lot of activity, and we are at DPH and my group, as well as colleagues from across the department, readying ourselves from those hearings. And we'll look forward to both reporting on a lot of our progress in expanding access to behavioral health services, as well as highlighting the work that still needs to move forward. I will stop there.
I'm sorry, you got them all right. I was getting all woo. So yeah, I was waiting for the treatment on demand hearing, and you went to the Dorsey, and then that comes first. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted the members to lower their hands if they have old hands up. And I'll give you a second to do that.
Mine hand is new.
Okay, Member Wong and Member Fields, is that a new hand then as well?
Yes, it's my
Okay.
third hand. Yeah.
Your third hand. Okay. Thank you. Dr. Kunitz, how long do we have with you now? How long are you able to be with us?
Dare I say, as long as you want?
No, don't say that. We've worked on a very concise agenda, but thank you. Just as long as I know that I can get my question in too. So we have Member Wong, Member Fields, and then anyone else want to raise your hand, please do.
I'm sorry, Chair, did you call on me?
I did. Thank you, Member Wong.
All right. So thank you. So thank you, Dr. Kunitz, for the updates. And as I'm listening to it, and I think, and I don't want to be a thorn on any entity side, but I do want to just kind of bring it back again. And I really want to concur with Member Fields that if there's an opportunity for the IWG members to have at least kind of time to just kind of look at and review everything before the actual December implementation report. And what I do want to, keep bringing it back up is that I appreciate that the full full operation of these entities have actually established, operation 24/7, full capacity of staffing. And I want to bring it back to, again, in the ordinance, we are supposed to be able to not only hire contract workers, and I understand they're important, but also retain positions for the city employees. And I never seen, unless I missed it, I've never seen what is the percentage of what we hire. I think seem like what I'm hearing is more contract workers that are being trained, hired, and established. So I want to just kind of, bring that back forth. And then also the I lost my other point. Oh, and the mapping, the mapping of the services. I think the caller kind of brought me back to it again. We have a lot of beautiful, wonderful services, and I don't even know all of the services that we have, but I know that there might be some that are current and operating and pretty successful. And again, I understand we have established all these other new services. I was out in the past, I've asked, whether or not we can actually enhance or add more to the current programs that we have. And so those are just the 2 points that it kept coming back to me. And I do hope that, per member Fio's request, that, as IWG members, we will have an opportunity just kind of process, sit, and then kind of relook at all the things that what we have done. Thank you.
Chair Lasar, should I respond?
Yes, please.
Thanks, Member Wong, for your comments. Just on the mapping, we are intending to, so let me just start with, yes, agree with the caller and agree with Member Wong about the need for clear inventory and mapping of services, and we are scheduled to present a draft of this to you all next month. So I just want to start there. I didn't completely follow your first question or your first statement. Was it in response to the services that I presented on today, or a more general comment about the proportion of city workers as compared to contracted workers?
Right. I think part of it is what so far thus far, all the other programs I hear, we hire these wonderful people with training, but then yet I still have not seen the percentage of, I guess it's in general, Dr. Kunis, in general, that, what percentage of city workers are being hired and what contract workers are being hired, because we're supposed to be hiring city workers as well, not just all contract workers. And again, it's not like my bias about, certain, but I think I just want to bring it back to the forefront that, city workers also are important entities where there are a lot of people who are seasoned, and there are a lot of people who are experienced, who have been in the system and know the system and have worked with the, many difficult population. So I just want us not to forget the other entities that do extremely good work.
So thank you for your comments. As you've heard me report, we have hired, I believe the number, I don't have my notes in front of me, more than 400 city workers to implement the variety of both MHSF related and as well as other behavioral health services. We have less. I'm getting a phone a friend in my text. The number is more than 360, we have less accounting of numbers of staff that community-based organizations have hired. Our contracts and performance reporting doesn't ask for that. The other thing I'll just share, and is that for example, and maybe I just need to highlight these in my reports, the the programming that I just mentioned for mobile crisis is actually hiring city workers and more city employees, just as an example. So there are times perhaps that we are not highlighting that specifically, but I can certainly attend to that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cummins. Member Fields?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to compliment you on the balance. I think there have been a lot of city workers under the teams out in the field, and some of us in the nonprofit sector have been waiting for the further expansion that might more appropriately include contracts in that. But certainly the Soma Rise program is an example of that. And I think the city's done a good job so far. We're a little worried about the balance going maybe way too far on the side of city workers. So I don't know what Member Wong is worried about. But as we go forward, I'm aware that the city is conscious of the really rich resources in the contracting sector for expansion. And remember, the MHSF is about expansion of services, not about retention of existing workforces or anything else. And that's how we get a new, more improved system. But the one thing I wanted to ask you about, Dr. Cunnington, was first of all, and congratulations on the grants from the state. I think that's wonderful work, taking advantage of an opportunity. I know the next round for BCHIP programs is in October. It actually offers an opportunity for non-shovel ready projects and a lot of the restrictions that were on the first two rounds. So I'm wondering what the process will be within the department of reaching out to the nonprofit sector for ideas about utilizing the BCHIP process for the next round of services. Certainly, we're still looking at a goal of expanding beds and other parts of our system in this last round of BCHIP, which allows for envisioning, purchasing, getting a property, renovating a property, is more open-ended than the previous rounds have been. So is there a way in which you're soliciting ideas within the department from the broader sector outside of city government for ideas about how we might expand the service system with our nonprofit partners?
Member Fields, let me check in with the team. I know for the first round, we set up some input structures, and I just want to find out what we are up to in that regard.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Eisen?
Thanks. I'm not sure this is really a question for you, Dr. Cunnins, but it's since we have the October progress report, and we're discussing preparation for the next round of implementations. Within the legislation, there was supposed to be an analysis done, and this is probably more directed to the Controller's Office, of parity wages and the nonprofit workforce. And I'm wondering, and again, you probably don't necessarily have the answer for this, but this is the review period of the work group. Where is that in this process? Like, at what point is that report being done and then delivered, and then a set of actions or a set of recommendations come from that? And again, you may not have the answer, but perhaps the Controller's Office does.
I can defer if anyone is on from the Controller's Office. That analysis is underway, and I don't have the timeline, and I don't know if someone from Controller can answer.
Yeah, Dr. Cunnins, I think my colleague from the Controller's Office, Wendy Lee, can speak a little bit more to the timeline. So yeah, I'll punt it to her and let her answer. Thank you.
Good morning, folks, and thank you very much, Member Eisen, for your question. Yes, so right now we are in the stages of starting to start conducting qualitative interviews in terms of for this group. Let me just jump ahead to, I think, Member Eisen, timeline was your question. Our plan is right now we're in the early stages of really laying out what is our strategy to be able to answer some of these questions and identifying the whole world of what are the BHS questions. We're really trying to focus in our analysis on what are the ones that are particularly relevant for the implementation and success of mental health stuff. Really just trying to keep an eye on the legislation, which is really around staffing and wage issues that are impacting the success of mental health stuff. So Right now, we are in early stages of being able to come up with a strategy to look at this both on the city staff as well as with CBO staff. To give you a little bit of a preview, we're hoping to have a little more context and lay out our a more detailed timeline and strategy in the December IWG update, but really recognizing this group's expertise, and part of developing that strategy, we, want to hear from you all and have some feedback sessions or discussion groups, probably teeing that up in November to help drive that strategy. So I know that's a lot of, we're kind of planning for the plan right now, and probably timeline wise, in terms of findings, we're looking at the spring. Just to give you a little bit sense of timeline. I don't know if Member Eisen, if that helped answer your question, or let me know what other questions that raises, and I'll either try to answer now or we can bring back and loop back with you.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Very helpful. I see Member Salinas's hand. I have my hand up as well. So I think these are the last hands we'll take for today.
I've been trying to raise my hand, and I don't know, technology doesn't like
Okay,
me.
Member Short.
In the queue too. Thank you.
I got you. Okay, so we need to wrap this up quickly. So let's see, Member Salinas, you, then Member Short, and then I'll hold mine if we don't have time. So let's
just on the staffing update, we did actually have a brief presentation last month. And I think that, and I'm looking back at the notes because I did see it recorded that a couple of us had asked that we have a more frequent. I mean, I felt that it was what was being presented to us was very sparse and very questionable, and we had asked for a more frequent update, an every other month update. So that would have been would be for October. So are you saying there won't be an update in October? The next update will not be until December.
I don't believe that's what was said.
Okay. I do remember asking for that.
I remember that as well. Member Salinas, can you just make a specific note about the part, exactly what we had wanted to hear?
And there was specifically, I was expecting someone from the controller's office to touch base with me because I had data and I never heard from anybody in the controller's office. So I just want to bring that up very quickly, and hopefully we can touch bases before the October meeting this time.
That would be great. And I know we've had some changes. We've actually had like 3 or 4 different changes in our controller's office team. So yes, we will. Oksana, if you can take a lead on that, that would be really great. Andrea, or Member Salinas, does that feel complete? Okay, wonderful. I'll make sure that we get more answers. I recall the comments from last month as well. So thank you. To Member Short, please.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you mention dual diagnosis beds, which you probably always mention. It's kind of natural for us in the field, but I feel like it's getting lost, like in the whole public debate and all the ideas coming out of City Hall and et cetera. So I'm hoping that you can also, as you're working to get those beds, also just continue to inject that into those debates and those programming and all of that, and the education you do, because I think it's vitally important. For instance, in Supervisor Dorsey's called a resolution, but really it's a 21-page plan. It says very little about that. That's an example. Speaking of, the other thing that it says very little about is mental health SF. And I'm wondering, with that hearing coming up and or conversations you've had with his office, if any, whether there's been a discussion about how the two might intersect and or overlap. It seems like kind of crazy right now to have this whole other big old plan when we have this that we're working so diligently on implementing. And then finally, relatedly, with, again, these 4 different hearings, probably more if this pertains to 3 of them after today's. I'm wondering how much you're talking to folks about the city's harm reduction policy. I noticed that once again in that plan, but also, you know, in different proposals and ideas that are being talked about. We can probably expect this to pop up in maybe every one of these hearings about sober housing, about different types of kind of coerced treatment, criminalization efforts to address drug use, you know, all of these things that really go against the grain of harm reduction. And so I kind of wonder, or maybe I urge yeah, you to play a role in perhaps educating people. Maybe that's part of the problem, reminding people that it is actually a city's policy, and you know, I wonder, kind of laying out sort of the boundaries on that one, because it's sort of difficult when people are throwing out these ideas that actually, you know, are kind of non-starters. And it's like, let's have these people be thinking creatively from a place of, you know, where the city has decided we are, versus all these things that, you know, we've already long ago decided are not consistent with city values or policy. That's a lot. Answer all that in 2 seconds. You get, you know, just whatever you want to say about all that is fine.
Well, thanks, Member Short. That was a lot. You know, I think my observation about the conversation in the city has really veered into a lot of conversations about harm reduction versus treatment. And I would just, I am trying to speak about those approaches as not as fighting with each other, and that they are part of a continuum of care and services for people who use drugs and people with substance use disorders. And quite frequently, as you rightly point out, with other mental health conditions, serious mental illness or otherwise. And that, and some of you are in organizations that, and all of you, I think, embrace both harm reduction approaches, along with what I think we would construe as more traditional treatment. And so I think one of my approaches and in conversation and in speaking with people about my own experience about what works, how to engage people, how to keep people in care, how to reduce their risk of overdose and other untoward health outcomes, is to really change the direction of saying it's us versus them, or your way, not my, you know, sort of this back and forth, which I don't think really helps people, the individuals with active substance use and or mental health issues, and that we need different things for people across their journey. Sometimes we need both things at the same time. Sometimes the things are just the things, that treatment is harm reduction after all. And so anyway, those are a bit of my musings, but I really invite you to, all of you, to join me in helping to articulate that we all care deeply about folks with substance use and mental health concerns, and we are all working to improve their lives. And we all need each other to help advance that mission. I don't know if that really helps, but that is my take.
It does. Thank you, Dr. Clemens. I have been given the high sign, but I did want to say 3 things. One, congratulations on the funding. That's outstanding. I will be looking to see what happens with it and how that's rolled out. Will it go to subcontract? Is this specifically for city? And then what happens from there? I know we'll all be very interested in I love the 3-year plan around the anti-racism work and the treatment and really the raising the competency level of the staff overall. If we don't have that, we won't get anywhere with the city staffing and with, frankly, with staffing at every agency or every contractor, every aspect of the system of care. And so congratulations on that. Definitely would like to hear more, either here or somewhere else. And I did want to also ask about the Kaiser piece, to see if you could share a little bit more information with us about what's going to be happening today and then what your take is, because it's very concerning for our community members with this strike. And I know I'm rampant to say we need to sue Kaiser. The city needs to sue Kaiser to get parity. And I say that maybe every meeting. And I don't mean it in that I think Kaiser are bad people. I think the government relationships and the benefit folks have been outstanding in their work. In the last couple of years, there's been changes. But I am deeply concerned. The Kaiser insures, I believe, over 60+ % of our communities members in San Francisco. We have 90% of my staff who have Kaiser who cannot get mental health treatment who need it. It's horrific. So I would love to hear anything that you can share with us today, or if you can come back and share with us, however that works, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll just say I don't know fully what will happen at the hearing. We'll be sharing some of our recent hiring successes and our ability to expand programs to give an update on the city and the safety nets, both ability to hire and also just to acknowledge that there are challenges as well. I think as you know, again, speaking from a national and local perspective, is parity is our goal. I think that we all want that as employers, as people who have, many of us in the city also have Kaiser, and access really is vital in the commercial or insurance space, but imperfect. And we know this from data from both national studies as well as local. So I don't have much more to say except thank you for raising it, and we share your concern also.
Thank you, Dr. Cunnins. I know we'll be happy to see you back next month. I believe you're on our agenda. And I will, at this point, look for the next trustee slide. I guess we're going to public comment first, though. So, Jessica, could you take us there, please?
Of course. I'm now opening up public comment for discussion item 4. Members of the public who wish to provide public comments on this item should call 415-655-0001, access code 2487-225-6148, then pound, and then pound again. If you haven't already done so, please dial *3 to line up to speak. A system prompt will indicate you have raised your hand. Please wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted and you may begin your comments. Please note that you will have 3 minutes. So I am now checking the queue to see if there are any hands up. And we will give callers the opportunity to raise their hands. So again, thank you everybody for your patience. We want to make sure that the public also has the opportunity to comment on these. Callers, if you have not already done so, please press *3 to be added to the queue. There are no callers in the queue, so public comment is now closed. And next, I will pass it to Chair Lassard to go over discussion item number 5.
Thanks, Jessica. Chair Lassard stepped away from her desk for a moment, so I'm going to cue this up. Discussion number 5 is to invite back the Office of Coordinated Care to hear a little bit about what they've been up to with the design and the implementation. So we look forward to hearing the Director of the Office of Coordinated Care, Heather Weisbrod, present on this, and welcome, Heather.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me here today. Should I wait for Chair Lassard to return or?
No, please go ahead.
Okay. If I could get the next slide. It's nice to see everybody. I think I was last here in the spring, in February, March, presenting on the Office of Coordinated Care. So here today to review again what the Office of Coordinated Care is, and provide some updates on the work that we've been doing, and then start hopefully a regular cycle of returning to give updates more frequently. So I'm going to start with a refresher on the Office of Coordinated Care. The structure hopefully will be familiar from past presentations, but I just want to make sure that we're setting a foundation, and then we'll provide some Office of Coordinated Care implementation updates. I'm going to provide a brief case management expansion update, but I'm actually hoping that in our next presentation, which I believe is scheduled for November, that we'll be able to give a deeper dive into the case management expansion. That's something that merits, I think, more time, and would like to invite some additional team members to participate in that discussion as well, because it's a pretty big undertaking. I'll also be providing an update on technology, and then talking a little bit about what's next. And then I won't talk about community engagement now, so I think that's going to be folded into Valerie's presentation about community engagement right after this. So if I could get the next slide. And the next. So this represents the Office of Coordinated Care planning domain. Two kind of major sections that we've been working on under the planning domain. One is the actual structure of the Office of Coordinated Care. So the organization of the Office of Coordinated Care, what will live within the Office of Coordinated Care, what the functions will be, and responsibilities and staffing. The other distinct but very overlapping and related piece is the larger case management expansion, some of which is managed by Office of Coordinated Care, but not all of which is managed by Office of Coordinated Care, but both obviously very related and both happening under the Office of Coordinated Care planning domain. So I'm going to start by giving an overview, and really my presentation today I think is going to be largely focused on this bubble on the left, which is the Office of Coordinated Care structure, though I will talk a little bit about the case management expansion as well. If I could get the next slide. So the goal of the Office of Coordinated Care is to support equitable and low barrier access to behavioral health care, and then supporting seamless transitions between systems and levels of care. And get the next slide. There are two main components that will be in the structure and organization of the Office of Coordinated Care that will be living within Office of Coordinated Care. Those include our existing behavioral health access programs, the Behavioral Health Access Line and Behavioral Health Access Center, and then also this new component, which is our care management and transition support services, which will provide centralized care coordination and case management, specifically really focused on helping people who are making transitions between levels of care or who have needs that impact engagement in behavioral health services. But big focus here on people experiencing homelessness and supports for people experiencing homelessness. So people leaving acute settings or up to 250 holds. And if I could get the next slide. So as mentioned, we will be integrating the existing behavioral health access programs. They're not officially part of the Office of Coordinated Care yet, but that's work that we're doing over the next several months to make sure that we have a really comprehensive Office of Coordinated Care that has a central door or central doors into the system and the support that's needed to help people access the services they need and engage in the services they need. So these existing behavioral health access programs include the 24/7 state mandated call center for access to behavioral health services, and then our behavioral health access center, which provides walk-in access to behavioral health services and currently located at 1380 Howard. And if I can get the next slide. The newest section, our care management and transition support services, is really focused on, again, supporting people who are coming out of hospitals, coming out of jail, people experiencing homelessness who need additional support in order to engage into the behavioral health system and need care coordination support. So we're providing multiple strategies, including providing consultation and problem solving for hospitals, jail, other partners outside of our system who are working with people who need connection to behavioral health and might have complex behavioral health needs and need support, understanding the system and determining the right level of care and the right set of services. We are providing centralized follow-up for people making transitions between levels of care or leaving involuntary holds. And then also providing bridge case management services with goals of engaging, stabilizing, making sure that all care and service needs are addressed, and then connecting to ongoing behavioral health services. If I could get the next slide. Within the care management transition support services, just to give a glimpse about how we're organizing things, we have two pieces. So first is the care management triage team, and this is really referred to as the brain of this care management transition support services component. So it's really the coordinating team that's responsible for receiving all referrals, triaging referrals, identifying needs. This is the team that's interfacing with the hospital, interfacing with jail and with community partners and providing consultation. They're coordinating care with locations that are discharging, so with the hospital, and then deploying case management services. So if they identify, for example, that somebody needs bridge case management services or needs a particular level of care, they will help make that connection. And if I could get the next slide. The second component is our bridge and engagement services team. This is it's a direct services case management team that was working with people with high acuity needs, working with people who are leaving hospital, leaving jail, or have otherwise poor connection to behavioral health services. So this is a field-based team. We're trying to provide a sort of outreach and engagement, really trying to make sure that we can engage with people and get them into the services, the care that they need. So this team is also providing its connection to health and non-health services. So in addition to providing connection to behavioral health, also providing connection to medical care, to housing, to benefits, other resources that are needed. And then this team also has the ability to provide bridge behavioral health services, including medication, if that's needed to help somebody stabilize post-acute care. Next slide is great, thank you. The key performance indicators for these teams are rate of successful connection to routine behavioral health services. So that is really one primary indicator for us that we are doing what we want to do is that we're connecting people when it's appropriate, when it's needed to routine behavioral health services. And we're using the same definition here as the mental health SF analytics and evaluation team in terms of routine behavioral health services. Rate of successful connection to primary care and to other physical health services. And then rate of successful connection to other non-health services. And then we're also looking independently, also in alignment with the mental health SF A&E team at the rate of completion of coordinated entry housing assessments. And okay, so I'm going to switch focus to talk a little bit about the case management expansion, just to show that world. In fact, I get the next slide. So this shows, and I think nothing has changed in terms of where we're adding, I think since the last presentation, and we'll give more of an update in November. But the case management expansion that we're working on is living in a few different places to represent. We wanted to make sure that case management is available to people throughout the system, wherever they are receiving care, and at kind of particular points where there's additional case management support needed. We are working here on, there's some new teams also working on adding and leveraging existing teams and enhancing existing teams. So it's a combination of new and enhancements and expansions of existing teams. So we have, with the Office of Coordinated Care, the Care Management Transition Support, which I just talked about, so I won't talk about that much. But with the Street Crisis Response Team, we have what's known as the Street Crisis Response OCC team, or Office of Coordinated Care team. And that is a team that is providing follow-up for people who have had contact with the Street Crisis Response team with a particular focus on people who have been 5150 after contact with the Street Crisis Response team, although they are trying to provide follow-up to everyone that the Street Crisis Response team has contact with. And then within our system of care, which is how we refer to the treatment services within behavioral health services, we are expanding the intensive case management, or ICM programs, and then we are adding case management at mental health outpatient and substance use outpatient programs. Those are critical places where additional case management is needed in order to engage people into care and retain people in care. And ideally be able to maintain people at a lower level of care. If I could get the next slide. So I'm going to repeat a lot of what I just talked about, but wanted to make sure that we had the overall structure, the planning structure of the Office of Coordinated Care, between Office of Coordinated Care organization and case management expansion, and before providing implementation updates. So in terms of updates, we'll start with behavioral health access programs. With our behavioral health access line, which is the 24/7 state mandated call center, we probably have reported that there was implementation of new call center technology last fall, which has really vastly improved hold times, tracking of calls, ability to see dispositions, just as a vast improvement over the call center technology that dated, the original call center technology, which dated to 1999. So that's been an enormous benefit to the behavioral health access line. Next steps will be streamlining their workflow. So their hope, right, is to eliminate client callbacks. Right now, they sometimes during particular times they have to call clients back in order to determine needs, to screen and determine needs. And so they are streamlining their workflow so that clients call one time, get screened, and they get linked directly to the appropriate service. So that is being initiated this month. I was in testing last week and this week. and then hopefully implemented more fully in the coming weeks. But that's also a pretty major workflow change. They're also working on increasing capacity to manage calls related to substance use. Many of the calls that they had been receiving have been related to mental health. We want to make sure that this is a team that can respond to mental health and substance use calls and connect people to the right service. And then the team is also, along with other teams, and I'll talk about this more, is moving their tracking and their documentation to Epic in November of 2022, which will be of great benefit. If we get the next slide. In terms of the Behavioral Health Access Center, one major update is that there was an expansion of the hours of operation in June. So hours were expanded Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. They had previously been 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So there are additional 2 hours in the evenings. There were 48 people as of this past Friday were served during those 5 to 7 p.m. hours. That number is slowly ticking up as time goes on. One of the challenges or lessons learned from that challenges has been there was initially low utilization of those expanded hours, the 5 to 7 p.m. expanded hours. So the team is working on trying to determine whether that's related to low need or people don't yet know about the service, or if there are other barriers in place that might be preventing people from fully utilizing those expanded hours from 5 to 7 p.m. The other thing that the team has seen is that many people who are dropping in during those 5 to 7 p.m. hours are in need of crisis resources, or are just having trouble getting connected because that's many programs are closed at 5. And so they're just taking note of this, but keeping an eye on it and to better understand what the needs in the community would be. Next up for this team are the second phase of expanded hours. So that will be happening this fall. It is pending some additional hiring, but the expanded hours will be expanding to Saturdays and Sundays from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then this team also is moving tracking and documentation to Epic. If I could get the next slide. In terms of the OCC care management transition support services, we have hired 13 of 23 staff for these teams. We've launched phases 1 and 2 of implementation. So the first phase was taking referrals for enhanced CalAIM, enhanced care management services. The Bridge and Engagement Services team is an ECM provider, so working as part of the CalAIM enhanced care management. And so we initially started with taking referrals for ECM services. We also started taking referrals from hospitals, from emergency department, BES, from inpatient, for individuals who are discharging to the community specifically. And then our triage team is attending weekly meetings related to discharge planning at ZSFG, and they're starting to track all 5150s at ZSFG. And I'll talk a little bit more about the 5150 project in a minute. It's a major project that I'm hoping in the upcoming months we can get some feedback from this group about. Our Bridge and Engagement Services team has been providing field-based case management services since, I believe, December or January, starting very small with a very small team, and have been able to increase the number of clients that they're serving and increase staff as we've been able to hire more staff. If I could get the next slide. Some of the challenges we've encountered have been, actually, this is not a challenge, so just a lesson that we've learned, and that we're, as we're looking at staffing and looking at workflows, that rapid response to referrals, especially those coming from the hospital and jail, is really key. We have much better success rate with engaging people if we can meet them while they're still in the hospital, before they leave the hospital, rather than trying to find them in the community. So our teams have done a pretty amazing job of providing this rapid response. So referrals coming from PES and the ED especially, trying to do same day within a few hour window of responding to the hospital and coming to the hospital to meet people and engage them and help them get to their next connection with the next service. We are spending a lot of time in the outreach and engagement phase. So, I mean, this I think is not going to be a surprise to anybody doing field-based services or more intensive services. But there is a lot of outreach and many outreach attempts, many types of outreach attempts, many engagement strategies tried before people necessarily fully engage with the team. And it's a particularly staff intensive and time intensive phase to be expected, but it is something that we are consistently looking at and trying to learn from. And I would say our major challenge is hiring for behavioral health clinicians. Again, this is not unique to Office of Coordinated Care. I think this is a widespread challenge across DPH and across the city and probably beyond. But that is impacting some of the implementation, is the ability to hire behavioral clinicians. In terms of our next steps, we will be doing our phase 3 implementation launch with Jail Health in October. So that will be, with each of these, we're starting off small to make sure that we have the right workflows in place and make sure that we have the right staffing in place. But identifying people with particularly high needs around behavioral health who are leaving jail, working with Jail Health to identify and who could benefit from our Virgin Engagement Services team for follow-up. In terms of planning with jail, there's a lot of within CalAIM, the jail and criminal justice involved population is a population of priority for CalAIM. So there's a lot of work that is happening within CalAIM around jail. And so we're trying to align and figure out with Jail Health and with our CalAIM team and where Office of Coordinated Care best will fit in with all of the new CalAIM requirements coming for that population and how we can best support. We are, so as I mentioned, we are working on developing and implementing a 5150 follow-up project. This is a project that is is ambitious and really needed. So we're going to be following up on, the goal is to follow up on everybody who has a 5150 in San Francisco. We are starting with ZSFG right now and really trying to define within that population what interventions we would be we'll be doing with each each type of 5150. There are many different populations and trajectories within the group of people who are 5150. And so we're doing a lot of work with our partners, with our community partners, and with CSFG partners to identify workflows and where to best focus our time. But our triage team has already started tracking to get a sense of the volume, tracking 5150s at CSFG, and starting to track also connections to care. And so our next mini phase is going to be having the triage team do some follow-up with people post 5150. But ideally in the future, we will be actually deploying people to the hospital to do follow-up with people before they leave the hospital, ideally. So it's an ambitious project, but again, very needed. And it's one that I'm hoping that we can bring back. I think probably not November, but whenever we're next scheduled, to get some feedback on. Although if you have feedback today, I would love any feedback. And I can describe more about the project and what we're thinking as well, if that's helpful. The other next step, which I will describe in more detail, is that we are also, for this team, also moving all tracking and documentation to Epic in November. If I could get the next slide. So I wanted to give and actually, would you mind going back to the last slide? Sorry. One of the things I wanted to make sure to do is speak to the recommendations from the last recommendation cycle that were made and talk about how we're thinking about and approaching and implementing those. So with our care management and transition support team, one of the pieces that seemed, there are two recommendations, I think, in particular, that were particularly relevant, I think, to this team. And those were, one, that we would provide continuous, a continuum of care coordination. So making sure that people have the care that they need when they're being discharged from acute levels of care, including leveraging ECM, I think was a suggestion. And we are an ECM provider, so that is aligned definitely. So we're, as mentioned, in terms of the recommendation around having a continuum of care for people being discharged, making sure there's a plan in place. We are working with hospitals prior to discharge planning, or prior to discharge to support planning, making sure that there's a solid plan in place and then following people out of the hospital when that's necessary. One of the things that we are looking at with the 5150 project is that right now this work is really referral based. So it's when the hospital determines that somebody is going to need that kind of support, or when we identify in a discharge planning meeting that somebody needs our support. But with the 5150 project, we will be moving towards providing much more systematic follow-up and making sure that we're determining and helping to determine the right level of care and right connection for people when they leave the hospital. Then there was another recommendation, second recommendation that was related to this was the one case manager across systems and having a connector role. And there were pieces of this absolutely that we are implementing, so including collaborating with other providers, participating in collaborative decision-making, a lot of case conferences with other teams, and ensuring that there are other necessary, I think there's a recommendation around our ROI follow-up. So making sure that we are getting permissions to speak with anybody on somebody's team, so that we can the best collaborative decision-making process. There was a suggestion to have one case manager, to have the OCC have the authority to convene across departments and to be the primary case manager connector across different departments. So we don't think that we have the authority to decide this, and I think also not clarity on whether it's feasible and where that particular role would reside, if it would need additional staffing. So we are not moving forward with that at this moment, but happy also to think through that further and further recommendation rounds. But we are, in many of these pieces, absolutely really working on needing to collaborate with other providers and not replicate what other providers are doing, to have clear plans with other care coordinators, with other case managers, if those are in place, about who is taking point on what, and then again on the case conferencing. Okay. If you can move to the next slide. So again, I'm just brief updates, and then we'll be able to dive more into these in November when we return. Just give an update on the care management and transition support. With the street crisis response team, we are, this team has been operational, so likely you've heard updates from this team already, but they've been operational since April of 2021. Yeah, this is the team that is
tasked with providing direct follow-up for people who have had contact with the street crisis response team. So since April 2021 through August 2022, this team has had follow-up with 2,300 unique individuals who have had contact with the street crisis response team. With the system of care and treatment services, we are expanding intensive case management, or ICM. So we are two strategies within the ICM expansion are adding funding to existing ICM providers to add staff, and then doing an RFP for new ICM providers. The last ETA, I believe, is October 2022. I can provide an update. We're back in November on that. And this RFP will be focused on augmenting ICM services for Black and African American community, for transgender and non-binary people, and for older adults. So really trying to add the capacity in ICM programs for providing some more congruent services and population-specific services. And then for the outpatient case management with our mental health outpatient, 7 of 14 mobile outreach team staff have been hired and are working with clients. These teams are going to be located and be a part of 6 of our civil service outpatient, mental health outpatient clinics. And so there'll be teams of 2 at each of those clinics. So about half of the staff have been hired and are already starting to work with clients. And then for substance use outpatient, the funding has been added to substance use outpatient programs with the goal of adding staff, 10 staff across, I think, 10 programs. So 1 staff at 10 different programs. And in terms of recommendations, and again, we'll get more back into this in November, but the recommendations around enhancing case management systems that are already working and effective, which we absolutely agree with. And then making sure that we are looking at caseload ratios. And so there were some specific caseload ratio recommendations, which we are working on implementing into the planning. And so we can talk more about in November. If I could get the next slide. In terms of our technology update, the OCC Epic build is underway. So our launch date is November 2022. Epic is a very widely used electronic health record system that's used not only outside of DPH, but within DPH, within hospital and primary care settings, and has very robust care coordination capabilities, which we're very excited to use. So these will allow us to have greater communication and visibility and care coordination with other users of Epic, including hospital and primary care. It will enable closed loop referrals, which means that we'll be able to send referrals to other users of Epic and be able to get feedback about what happened with those referrals. This is particularly relevant, I think, to our behavioral health access line and behavioral health access center, although all of OCC as well, because we're slowly, I think some of our civil service clinics are getting some Epic capability, at least ability to, well, not full Epic capability, but ability to receive referrals. And so at some point we'll be able to, and hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll be able to start sending closed loop referrals to some of our programs and be able to actually track much more carefully what the outcome of connections to our outpatient clinics, what they are. And then this will also enable improved data gathering about who OCC is serving and where our gaps are. So we're really looking forward to that. It's going to be a huge improvement, I think, for Office of Coordinated Care. And it's going to really help us, I think, identify also
where we need to focus resources and services at any given time. The components that are included in this EPIC build are the OCC care management transition support, OCC's behavioral health access programs, the street crisis response team and street crisis response OCC team, and then our outpatient mental health mobile outreach teams, which will also be providing ECM services. So very exciting to have all of these components be included in EPIC, all these disparate programs, but that need this this care coordination capability be included in EPIC and start start paving the way for VHS and EPIC. The process is an intense process, but the EPIC team is amazing. So they spent a long time learning about workflows, about the clients we're serving, about our goals, about how to track metrics that we want to track, and are building right now as we speak what we've asked for. And the official launch date, and I think we're still on track for this, is November 2022. And this tracks to the IWG recommendation around finding a centralized care coordination and communication and kind of stakeholder software or stakeholder engagement software communication tool. I think was and central record keeping database. Sorry. We of course are constrained by having protected health information and needing to maintain communication within DPH. But EPIC feels like an amazing tool. It also has, I think, future capacity. It allows to track referrals to external agencies now, although we won't be able to necessarily see the closed loop referrals. But I understand there might be future capacity around that. So we can close referrals and track closed referrals with programs and agencies beyond just DPH at some point in the future, we're hoping. So let's see. I think I can answer lots of questions about this as well. And if we could go to the next slide. And what's next? So our hope is to come back for a more in-depth update about case management expansion in November, finding a regular cadence for updates on OCC implementation, and identifying other places for feedback. And then really specifically hoping to figure out the best way to get feedback on the 5150 follow-up project. And we'll continue, of course, also bringing that back as we provide updates.
Wow, Director Weisbrod, that was incredible. So much. You can take a breath now.
Woo, thank you. I know. I think I just stepped through
I know that was a lot that you were delivering to us. So I know that I have a few questions. I also see that that Member Fields does as well. I'm sure some of my other colleagues will as well. I wanted to first congratulate you on how hard you've been working. That's very apparent. You know, it takes a lot just to, even with the hiring, with these various levels of testing that you're doing to ensure, you know, that that there's the one call piece, all of those different things. We're, you know, obviously very excited about. I wanted to ask a couple of questions. One, how are you going to ensure sort of that one call only? What are your, you know, sort of ongoing metrics process around that? Regarding raising awareness of the number, I literally have heard nothing anywhere at all, except for in this meeting that's supposed to exist. So I don't know how we get the communication strategy, the media strategy out there, but you know, it feels to me to be a continual significant challenge that I know that I have said to Dr. Cunnins again and again, and to Director Simmons before that. We have to do something with our media and communications. It floors me that we're in these silos and nobody knows what's going on. So the other issue is I want to applaud you all on the same day and within a few hours in the case management. That's just extraordinary. I know how much that takes, having done some of that work myself in the case management, and I really want to applaud everyone on it. I want to continue to see how we're able to do that as time goes on. I know you're hiring. I know you're doing all of these things. I know energy levels start to take their toll, and burnout prevention. And so just want to make sure that you're building in burnout prevention as you're doing this process, so that you're able to sustain those numbers and those responses, because as you said, it's catching folks, not catching is not the right word, meeting folks and engaging folks while they're in hospital is so crucial, given how much it takes later to even begin to find folks in the community, and then how much more entrenched they can be as they need to be. Not blaming community, but but circumstances. And then I wanted to also learn more about your outreach and engagement strategies. Given sort of the staff and the time extensiveness that it takes. So I think probably this is not the time for you to answer that, but just to make a note for future that I would love to hear more about that. And then wanted to also note that the Cal AIM and jail pop, again, I think courts may be another place to find folks, and maybe do a similar type process as when folks are in the hospital. And so hopefully it would feel less punitive, because there may actually be real support there versus, just as part of the the punitive correctional experience that many have had up to this time. So my hope is that it would be a different experience. So I think those are the things that I just wanted to raise awareness with. I don't even know if you have a response to anything. It may just be that you want to come back with the responses. That's fine for me as well.
I really appreciate the feedback, Chair Lassar, and I think most of these, yeah, I would love to have ongoing conversations, I think, about outreach and engagement strategies in courts, and can come back with that next time we meet. And also because I think that we can all learn, certainly hope to learn from this group also, and get feedback on our strategies. Because I think it's a shared, there's a shared need. In terms of the one call only times, also I think I'll have to come back with the metrics and talk to the team about.
Okay.
We're going to be measuring that, but I can come back with that as well.
Okay, and then the media strategy. I really want a media strategy. Maybe by the end of the year, I'll get to hear a media strategy and communication strategy. Dr. Cunnins, if you're still on, that's my throwing down the gauntlet in a very friendly, loving way. Wait, I don't even have my video on because I've been munching on food. But that's my like loving throwing down the gauntlet. Like, let's get a plan. You all are doing great work, and people don't necessarily understand what you're doing. And when we get that conversation out there about harm reduction and abstinence is all part of the same thing. All of these things that we're not getting the messaging out. And so I will be quiet there, and just want to thank you on your tremendous work. I can only imagine how hard you've been working. And so I hope that you also have a vacation, and self-care built in for you all as well, for the management team. I wanted to pass it over to Director Fields. I mean, what are we here in these realms? Member Fields, and then Member Salinas, I see your hand as well.
Okay, they're just, thank you. Heather. I agree that the amount of work that's been done on constructing this is really remarkable to date. I've got an hour of questions and answers, so I have to say a couple of things. And the main thing, Heather, has there been an opportunity for your team and for you to meet with the 24-hour community-based alternatives to jail, to the hospital, to talk about what their vision is for our case management and Office of Care Coordination that's different than what we've always had? If you haven't yet, I'm concerned about the problem solving and consultation at the hospital, because that's when things went wrong. And I'm not sure they have a very clear view. I think the client, him or herself, has a better idea about why that person ended up. And so I think the 5150 project is a critical one to this. I'd like to spend a lot of time on that alone. But the emphasis on mental health, behavioral health outpatient, I assume includes those programs, intensively staffed, Medi-Cal funded, to provide an alternative to the jail or to the hospital, not just clinics, meaning PRC Baker, Health Right 360, and Progress Foundation's continuum of care. We have a lot to share with your team about how, if we're really looking at what helps someone stay in the community after we've invested in an inpatient episode or a jail episode, the coordination of care is a key part of that. So I have a question of how this whole effort relates to the authorization process for movement, which can befuddle the best system of care if they're not coordinating that. And that's a big answer made in of itself, but it hasn't been mentioned in this whole report. So movement of individuals at appropriate times to levels of care requires the authorization process. And will this be subsumed in the Office of Coordinated Care so that it's client-centered instead of determined by other things? I think the question still remains that there are policies in the hospital, Heather, that affect whether or not someone is being offered quality care. And there's an assumption inherent in this that the hospital isn't part of the problem. And so the problem solving and consultation that you're doing with the hospital, I would like it transferred as well down to the community programs that are trying to avoid people having to end up in the emergency room. Problem solving and consultation. And I didn't hear that as an emphasis. And I'm saying that if we're going to do something different in this system of care, we have to look at what's getting in the way of success at the community level, not what the hospital thinks is their problem, how they get people out faster or what the problem is. It's a system of care discussion that has to occur. So I'm going to end this without being able to go. I would encourage you to reach out to Progress and to PRC Baker and to Health Right 360 and spend some time talking in detail with your key staff about how this working together will enhance people's ability to stay in the community. For instance, we have a lot to say about how the whole issue of the coordinated entry system doesn't meet my clients' needs. I have clients who are in the emergency room on a severe psychiatric crisis and a meth run on Thursday. They're out of that hospital into a hotel where they don't get any treatment support on Friday, on Monday. And their needs for housing are not being met by the coordinated entry system. It's everybody, HSH has not a great track record of serving the clients coming out of residential treatment after only 90 days of treatment and stabilization and resources. So we have a lot to say about how the outcome of our system of care following another 5150 or another jail episode is affected by how effective a coordinated care system is for following individuals to see that they're getting what they need. So if you have been doing that, I'm remote enough that probably I don't know it, but I would like to have some time spent on the system of care that's key to us minimizing hospitalizations when we can, minimizing jail episodes. And that's the information that a continuum of care has to offer as well. Not what went wrong, but what down the system of care isn't there is needed to make sure our investment, the client's investment in his or her own recovery, which I still hear never mentioned anymore in our discussion. Recovery has disappeared as a goal or as a word. It's just process stuff. And I want to dig into this because I know you and I know those are issues of your concern also, so that we're talking about what is the experience of the client who ends up in the hospital for the third time in a month because the system out there let them down because it's totally incapable and inadequate with enough resources to help them continue their recovery. Thank you.
Director Weisbrod, do you want to respond, or you want to? I know that was a lot, and I certainly think the recovery piece is something that we should lift up regardless. And just to be transparent, the planning team and I are connecting about the conversation right now, and wanted to say really, Member Fields, that your point is well taken. And so this kind of gets us into that we probably need to add more discussion time for each of these sections as they come on, so that we can have the discussion group here versus trying to schedule a discussion group offline. So I just want to make note and make that transparent, that no matter what we do right now, number one, we're extending our time and changing our schedule so that we can add extra discussion time right now as needed. So Director Weisbrod, please respond as much and as deeply as you want. I want to just also acknowledge Member Eisen and Member Salinas' hands as well. And let's just have let's have some deeper conversations and not be managed by the time right now. Let's jump in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate all of Member Fields, everything that you are talking about, and the opportunity for deeper discussion, and as well as potential future opportunities for deeper discussion. I think to answer one very concrete thing, the authorization process is not planned to live under Office of Coordinated Care, so it will be a separate department that will be kind of parallel to Office of Coordinated Care, that we are working on coordinating with closely, as well as with the residential system of care, to make sure that we're stepping in to support where we can, and are needed, and also supporting the flow through the system. I think to that point, I definitely, I mean, I think in terms of implementation launch, we did make a decision to launch at the hospital level, because we knew that there were just people who are coming out of the hospital with no follow-up care, and that seemed like a very important place to start. But there are plans to continue to provide more services and resources at the community level. I think what that will look like, and how to best be effective, how the Office of Coordinated Care can best be effective, and what is within Office of Coordinated Care's scope versus system of care scope, how we can best work together. I think all of that we'll have to do some work on. But I'm excited for that, because I do think that, and already we are getting questions and referrals from the community. So it's not that it's not happening, it's just in terms of the phases of implementation that we did start with the hospital, and with 5150s. But your points are well taken. Yeah, it would be great to get an opportunity to talk to Progress and PRC Baker. I have some of the referrals that we've been getting, and I'm aware of this issue around kind of flow through the residential programs related to lack of case management support in the community. So some of the referrals we have gotten have been from Bernadette and from some Progress programs. We've had a little bit of conversation there. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity, just to say, for us to be interfacing with the residential program and 24-hour programs in particular, and seeing how we can support flow and support people staying in the community. But it's a big conversation. I agree, and keep going.
Um,
Thank you.
Member
Look forward to
Fields.
continuing to talk. Yeah.
I was just going to say, Member Fields, I know that's not even going to be enough conversation. So did you want to, I was going to ask, are you satisfied for now, but is there another comment you want to make before we transition to the next person?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think that the theme here is that there's a critique of the system of care that is valid, that looks at certain prerogatives that are held by certain parts of the system that aren't examined sufficiently. So when you have a hospital stay where somebody waits till the very last day they're ready to go, and then they want someone in a bed that next day, that does not contribute to planned discharge goals. And I hope that the Office of Continuing Care is looking critically at all of the elements of the system of care, including us, but the hospital as well, about how do their policies that may serve their purposes get in the way of an overall goal of reducing unnecessary hospitalizations, getting people to the right level of care, and not just accepting their point of view as the thing we all have to respond to in order to improve the system. And I'm seeing some elements of that occurring again. And I think there's a lot of information down in the system of care that's a critique of the kinds of prerogatives that are still held, even by my system I'm talking about, but the hospital is not immune from that. And so I'd like this to be an ecumenical review of where do things go wrong, not a hierarchical one. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Fields. Yes, I can say I completely agree with you that we need to identify all of the places where there are barriers or flow issues.
Chicken and egg discussion, really. So you got to go on both ends. It's just a question of where first. Thank you. Really, really crucial. I think it was Member Eisen, then Member Salinas.
Thanks. I had a couple of questions. So, or maybe you can clarify something for me. I thought that one of the projects of, if not mental health SF implementation work group, but if of the OCC, was to map the system to get a sense of like how many care coordinators does an individual who's touched the system multiple times have, some kind of a systems map. So we have a sense of what, and I could be mistaken in that. So the reason I asked that question comes down to the recommendation that, as you said, was difficult to do, which is there a care coordinator or care coordinators? And so the assumption, their experience we would have, let's say if somebody's coming into residential substance use disorder treatment, maybe they've been in detox between Health Right and Joe Healy a number of times. Maybe they've hit PES a few times. So when they come to us, they're going to get some case management that's part of that's built into the project or the process of substance use treatment. And so what drove the question about, the case manager of case managers, if you will, is if you have a housing case manager and if you have a case manager from, let's say, probation, because they've been criminal legal involved, and temporarily, at least while they're with us in residential, they have a case manager. Is there somebody who oversees all that and kind of convenes those people? And I think that was the intent behind the request that OCC be a convener, if you will, or a mapper, but that a person would be way better served who comes in for a relatively short stay in treatment if there was somebody who already had been working with them who comes in and said, let's make a plan. Let's make a plan for Jill or Jane or Joe, whoever this is. Let's make a plan. This is what's happened before, and this is where they've come from. So that's kind of to the whole kind of convener of conveners question. And then the other one, I understand the 5150 project is obviously a critical place to start, but I would request that PES be the secondary, because there's a fair number of people who hit PES, let's say they're referred from a residential substance use treatment, that they appear to be in crisis, but don't meet the criteria for 5150. And those individuals who then may return to treatment either with or without medication and without any information of like what happened, like what's going on? How should we best serve you? And so those are two areas that I think we would probably reduce. We would improve like the ability to retain and care for people in those higher intensity, like the residential settings at Progress or PRC Baker or Health Right 360. So any thoughts about both of those issues?
Yeah, I think that in terms of the connector role, I think the piece that I was speaking to, it makes absolute sense to me because I have agree and have seen, somebody has a short-term case manager and then a short-term case manager, multiple short-term case managers, and having somebody who has who's more of a connector. I mean, I think that's a great word. Makes sense to me. I think it's the oversight of all of those case managers and the authority to have oversight, I think, is where that probably is we don't have the authority to say that, I think. But certainly playing that role, I think there are many ways of informally playing that role, especially when there's a longitudinal.
Yeah, and I think everybody would appreciate it. It doesn't
Yeah,
even like to have the authority. I understand
Right.
we requested the authority, but I think all the provider on the provider service side would all appreciate it if there's like one person kind of tracking all the little places and trying to help navigate somebody through those systems.
Right. Yes, absolutely. In terms of the mapping, because I think that is not necessarily, I know there's system mapping that's coming up in November. But in terms of the mapping that you're talking about, is that kind of specific client related, where for each client, looking at the different care coordinators involved? And
yeah, I would say for the people particularly who've kind of touched multiple systems more than once. Yeah, I mean, like you have a way to track, because they're all either going in through Avatar or Epic.
I see.
At one point or another, you have a way to say, oh, okay, these are some folks who, let's see, how many case managers does the average person have? How many systems have they hit? That's the kind of mapping I had thought was included.
It's not necessarily, I think, on my radar in terms of the scope, but this feels like a conversation that we should have. So
May I make a request, Member Eisen? That part, can you list those things? They're incredibly crucial and salient, but that wasn't even anywhere close to mapping for me. So I think because we all come from our different areas, we have different concepts of what that is. If you can make a note of those, that would be really helpful for the team.
Sure thing.
Thank you. Member Eisen, were you complete? You had another?
PES piece, I think.
Right, I think there was a second piece. And so the request for people who go to PES but don't end up on a 5150, or whose a hold gets dropped before they.
Yes, which is a fair number of people who show up at
Okay.
PES and don't ever get 5150.
Yes, that's true. Or who may go there voluntarily. Yeah. Okay, I think that there's overlap with the 5150 project that we're talking about, but that is a particular group of people that we certainly get individual referrals from PES, but in terms of the comprehensive and systematic kind of tracking, have not necessarily been included. But I think that's something that we need to better understand and take a look at. Because I understand people are coming back then to treatment programs, it sounds like, without a plan in place.
Correct.
And
Like
they
without a
need
plan or
something.
communication or medication or anything. So,
Okay.
And those doesn't always result. It's resulted in some really bad outcomes from time to time. So.
Okay.
The only thing, only one thing I wanted to add as sort of an example, Chair Lacerre, about what I was talking about regarding the mapping, is for the whole person care pilot project. Maria X. Martinez did this study, if you will. It was kind of blew my mind, and it had 3 3 tranches of people who hit the EED or multiple systems most times, and obviously de-identified. And then it showed all the places where they touched and how, like, what percentage of kind of what a number of people who hit each spot. It was kind of mind blowing, and it was incredibly helpful for me to think about. I learned a lot from just this spreadsheet, and so that's what I'm thinking about, but kind of not de-identified for the OCC, de-identified maybe for everybody else, but not de-identified for OCC.
Right.
I don't know if that's helpful. If that like makes more clear what I'm talking about.
Yes, I think so. Yes. Well, and I think one of the things that we had asked for feedback on was in terms of, yes, that makes sense. We're trying to identify some priority populations we wanted to make sure that we were following, and I think they were very aligned with that whole person care project. And I think where we're focusing that level of systematization right now, and this has been an evolution as a first stage, is on 5150s, but does not mean that will be the only population of people that we are looking at. But that's that question of who else and how we identify kind of on a population level, so that we can follow individual people within that population, the people who need us the most and need care coordination the most, is definitely something that's still on, I think, on the table.
Thanks.
And I wanted to thank you, Member Eisen, and also mentioning Maria X. Martinez. May she rest in peace and power. That if we could find that report, that would be something amazing. If you have that, or if somebody in the system has it, that would be really helpful to see, because I think those are the types of things that can really shift our paradigms and open us up to different lenses and ways of doing things. So thank you so much for mentioning that. I have Member Salinas next, and then, yeah, and I apologize, somebody outside is doing something. So Member Salinas, will you take us to the next question, please?
Oh my goodness, there's so many questions. I guess I think the mapping, I know I and Amy had met months ago with I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the deputy director of DPH's name right now. It suddenly skipped my mind. And we had talked about, because we've been asking for mapping for a while, and she had suggested, starting with a mapping from PS, like folks coming through
Marlo
PS.
Simmons.
Yes, Marlo Simmons. And so I guess, I think just to echo that the devil is in the details around that, right? And so how far, so I think that most of our clients, right, are going into PS and then coming right back out in a couple of hours, right, with no, we have our team there, though, that we've been since we have our team there with Allison Livingston. It's been super helpful, right? Super helpful that we can coordinate with them to get folks at least to dock or somewhere, because before that they were just out here, in 2 hours time or something, and that's been extremely helpful. And I think that maybe, touching base with them would be extremely helpful. I think that really the critical points are maybe like from duck, what happens, if they get someone, if there happens to be availability at duck, what happens from duck? Are there no beds anywhere, and so they're just out on the street, or if folks just aren't stable enough to even get from duck to a residential treatment program, even if there was a bed. Because I think also in looking at how much it relates to what you're talking about around these goals with the OCC, about being able to actually connect with somebody while they're still on the unit, for instance. Like, nobody's getting to the unit, it seems like these days, or if they get to the unit, they're also out very quickly, you know, in 2 or 3 days. And I think that back in the day, you know, when I remember first doing this work, when the FSPs first rolled out, I had a smaller caseload. So I all the time was able to meet my new clients while they were still on the unit. But, you know, units have closed since then. So that isn't even happening. I'm sure, you know, the opportunities to be able to meet, you have to get out very quickly, right? From one, you know, even then, you know, you did have to get out pretty quickly. Now you'd have like 48 hours or something to get out there. And if you're, you know, extremely busy with a overburden, you know, if you've got short staffing issues, I mean, here our caseloads are supposed to be 17, but if everyone's carrying 20, 22 clients, but also, as you know, we have a 10-month wait list. So that's just not going to happen. So again, that's going back to the linkage teams, right? With here, the stabilization teams. And so as they're losing staff, they also are not going to have the capacity to get out in time to meet somebody while they're still at the hospital. Or maybe not this time, maybe next time, right? And so I think that looking at staffing, at our staffing shortages, looking at caseload numbers is critically important. Also, it's critically important for retention, right? For staff retention. And so I'm wondering what you're thinking are going to be the client to staff ratios on your new teams. I'm also, I mean, I know you're coming back, so also in December, is it, I think? So I'm wondering also what are the numbers, you know, of how many for this intensive case management, I guess, expansion. One, are those going to be at the civil service clinics? And what are their client to staff ratios? I don't know if you already have ideas about the concrete ideas about the client to staff ratios. And with the best team, I mean, also, what are you expecting are going to be the length of service? Is this a long term or is it 6 months? What are the expectations about how long people are going to be followed by these different teams? I don't know if you have any answers to any of those.
Yes, and I'll try to take them one by one, but please let me know if I'm forgetting something.
I have so much more.
In terms of talking to PES and the citywide team there, absolutely, yes. We've been in communication, and I think PES in particular is, to your point, very well covered. And so what we're providing there is when they have several teams that they can refer to provide linkage services, and BEST is one of them. I think, but there's I think opportunity for more partnership around this 5150 project, but absolutely they are a tremendous resource and really important resource. And what we want to do is identify, in particular with 5150 project, identify those places where people don't have that level of support, the same level of support as PES does. And I think as we start looking at, you know, I think to Member Eisen's earlier point about having, not just looking at people who have been 5150, but as we start looking at crisis utilization, that looking at DUC will be hugely important as well. The caseload ratios, I think, I mean, definitely I will want to save that for we're coming back in November to talk about case management expansion. The ICM caseload ratios in particular have been a topic of huge discussion. I think, I mean, exactly to your point, I know that they've increased over time and you know, create some challenges. I think we've talked about that. Create challenges around client care and around retention. So there's a lot of discussion happening around those in particular. And for the ICM expansion, most of that expansion is going to be CBO. So funding that has been added is to CBO, to contracted agencies. And then the RFP, of course, will also be going to contracted agencies. For the mental health outpatient case management, that is being added at civil service. But the ICM is largely CBO focused. And
I'm sure I lost your next questions as well.
I guess it raised another question. So I think what might be helpful for future, if it's possible, just in looking at a mapping of OCC and then where the CBO link connections are going to come into play with the different teams of OCC for future. What else today? I was just talking about, I think those were the main things. I think I'm also was also thinking that the majority of our clients that have actually been admitted to inpatient units now are going on my team. I'm speaking for my team, have been from the emergency departments at other hospitals, right? And so I don't know I know that really expands mapping at looking at the EDs at CPMC and Parnassus, and our clients are going far. They're going to Santa Rosa, San Jose, right? So they're going really, really far. And then it's very difficult. One of my case managers had to drive all the way to San Jose to get her client back, or the transportation sometimes is very difficult. We were having one of my clients just spend a long time at the ED at CPMC, and because they couldn't figure out transportation to get him to Sacramento because he had COVID, right? And that was the only unit that would take him with, so the transportation issues end up being, this is an aside, but just, looking at if you've got a client that's in Santa Clara somewhere and there's a dual diagnosis program for them in the city, also, how that ends up getting delayed with not being able to get them transported back here to go to, Baker House and whatnot. So I think that's at some point tracking of what's going on with the other folks at the EDs across the city and what barriers might be happening for them to then get back here and get connected to the dual diagnosis programs. And so, but that, that just expands and expands. And so I don't know, this is probably just a phase one. But I think I was just, asking about the length of, that was it. How long people were going to be meant to be serving, these different teams are meant to be serving clients.
Yeah, well, and so just to your point about the other EDs and hospitals, and those are conversations that are definitely starting to happen, and starting to get some referrals from there, but the systematic follow-up is planned at the later phases. But yes, I mean, I think a huge number of our folks that we want to be able to serve are landing at other hospitals. The best is, it's really, I mean, we're kind of trying to learn right now how long people need. So 3 to 6 months, I think is what we're thinking. But certainly if people need longer, there's flexibility around that. And there are times where there's actually just a very short intervention needed to connect the person to into the right care that will provide case management as well. So we're trying to have it's a shorter term intervention, but with some flexibility. And we want to make sure, I think the other piece is connecting somebody, let's say, to an ICM program doesn't mean that we're best going to immediately close, that we want to make sure that there's engagement that is happening and that the person is really securely connected. So some follow-up that happens after that engagement as well.
I guess I would just say for flow, I mean, so we get a large number of our clients, of course, from the linkage to stabilization teams, and frequently it is taking us more than 6 months to be able to have an opening to take those clients. And I think the hope is that the increased staffing and then at the ICMs at the CBOs might help with that. But I think that I mean, just to point out that concern that if we can't fill our spots now, we can add more positions, but we're going to have the same problems if we can't even fill the ones that we have now. And just thinking that at some point down the road, that if we just didn't have these huge wait lists, then we would be able to pick those people up right from the hospital, right? And so that we're doing a lot of short-term teams, but really the solution would be just to have all those positions at the long term. And then maybe more, we're also not able, maybe if we had smaller caseloads and housing, all those things, that then we could step people down more quickly to then the civil service clinics. But right now, also, even when we have somebody with the, it's like this flow, I know it's like I think we're patching with short term, but then now it even takes 6 to 8 weeks to get somebody in for intake at the outpatient clinic. So I know these are these solutions, but I think that really we're front ending and where it needs to be back ended. And that we need to have more of the permanent or longer term care positions, along with all the other things, which this is what I'm sure you know. So I wonder where maybe at some point we got to reshuffle.
So I hate to jump in on such a important conversation. I have been asked or reminded that today we're only doing 3-hour meeting. And so I needed to see how many folks are able to stay or not stay. We had promised that we would do, Jen, actually, can you just come on and say what we promised? It'll be a lot shorter if you just say what we're trying to do. Then I try
Sure.
to figure out from all these notes what we're doing.
Sure. The last agenda item, we were going to talk through some community engagement activities. So one community engagement activity is specifically related to the OCC that we're talking about right now. And the other one was some brainstorming on what community engagement could look like in the future. So what we're hoping to do is there's a little bit of a time consideration with the OCC community engagement that we do need to have the team who is working on that come and present. Just briefly, we can do abbreviated, but they do need to kind of say some words to the IWG. And we'll punt the other stuff, the future-facing community engagement.
Yes, and so can folks kind of, I can't see everyone, but can you just chime in and tell us if you need to leave right away at 12?
This is Member Hammer. I can stay till 12:30.
Thank you. Anyone
I can
else?
stay, but can I have a bio break 5 minutes?
Yes.
Same here. Same here.
Okay. So we will, why don't we do this then? I know, Member Hammer, you are also wanting to ask a question or make a comment. Can you hold that, or is that something that you want to bring up today and we'll do on the other end of a bio break?
That's fine.
Okay, so let's take a quick 5 minutes. It's 11:53. Come back at 11:58, and we will continue then.
Chairless Air, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Hi, this is Steve.
Hey,
I
Steve.
actually had an obligation before 11 that I bumped because I was so
Okay.
engaged in this discussion, but
Oh,
I
no.
bumped it to noon. So I do
Okay.
have to, I do
Okay.
believe the engagement is a critical issue, but I gotta
Okay.
get off or,
Yeah, no worries.
all right.
We will see you next time.
Yes.
And I'm hearing you, so we're gonna keep working on it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
See you. Bye.
Chairless Sergeant Jim McQuiggan here. I can stay until about 12:45, no problem.
Oh, thank you, Jim. Good to
Bye-bye.
see you.
Good to see you too.
I'm back, but I'm eating, so I'm going to stay off camera until I'm done.
Thanks, Ika.
Okay, bye.
I'm back to and also having lunch.
Oh, great.
but
Okay.
but I'll turn on when I mean to say so.
Okay. And I guess what I will ask is, Director Weisbrot, are you back as well? Maybe not quite
I'm
yet.
here.
Okay.
Yes,
Oh,
I'm
you're
here.
here. Okay. Okay. Maybe the last question for you on your hot seat. We're gonna have to give you like a power bar or something before you have to go on next time, because I know we put you through it. So thank you. Yes, Member Hammer, please.
Well, this was actually an announcement related to the comment that Member Eisen made about the high users of multiple systems project that led by our beloved colleague Maria X Martinez. Just to let people know that we are really proud to announce the opening of the Maria X Martinez Health Resource Center on Friday. That'll be the new home of our Tom Waddell, or Whole Person Integrated Care Urgent Care Center, which was at 50 Ivy and Civic Center, located at 555 Stevenson, which is between 6th and 7th, and between Mission and Market, just south of Market. So really excited that will open. We'll do urgent care, transitional primary care. We have a beautiful new dental clinic, and integrated behavioral health, and integration with other city agencies serving people experiencing homelessness in that center. So just wanted to let people know about that.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I hadn't known about that. Again, PR, who knows? Communications. Thank you. If you have a flyer, please send it out to us.
Yeah, Chair Lassar, an email went out announcing the closure of urgent care at 50 Ivy, 50 Tom Waddell Place, and the opening of the new center. And I'm sorry to hear that you didn't get it. And we will make sure that we send out an announcement more broadly this week. Thanks for letting me know.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. I'm checking. Looks like yes,
I have a
please.
question.
Please.
Okay. Heather, I can't believe what you've done. I echo everybody else who said the same thing. It seems Herculean and it's an impossible task, but it's really critical. I have one comment and one question, to be quick. On the comment, I want to just echo the comments been made about hospitals. I've worked with hospitals for 35 years, and especially emergency departments. They're like silos in terms of everything else in the community. I shouldn't diss on my own clients, but having worked with these folks, they're kind of at a loss. And it seems that it's really important that OCC be on their radar screen. And if, and there are ways to try to, you could either try to deal with them individually, or you could do it through the hospital council. There's a hospital council rep for San Francisco. I suspect that the departments would be very happy to pull together the discharge planners and hopefully meet with your team and talk about how you can interact, and particularly for folks who come into the emergency department who are already on your radar screen. Because frankly, in the 99% of the cases, they have no idea. So that's just my quick comment. I have one other question, and I know you won't be able to probably answer this question, but maybe over time you can tell us. You mentioned that you've had, I think, 2,300 follow-ups with the target populations that have interacted with the street crisis response teams. I think it would be helpful at some point if we could get some information about what was the outcome of those 2,300 contacts in terms of those who were contacted and refused service, those who accepted service, and kind of what levels of service, and kind of how the care management or case management is working for those that you've had contact with.
Thank you both for the comment and the question. I'm actually meeting with Sean Coleman, I think, from the Hospital Council, hopefully soon. So I very much appreciate the comment. I think making sure that I'm on the radar and that we're working directly with each other will be really, really important. And then as far as the question, I think one of the questions for us, because this street crisis response team is the follow-up team is really embedded with the street crisis response team, if whether they should also be providing updates about the follow-up team, or whether that's better in the OCC updates. So we'll figure that out and bring back data.
Thank you so much, Member Lipton and Member Weisbrod. I guess it's actually time to go to public comment. We forgot about that part. So, Jessica, could you please take us to public comment?
Of course. We are now on public comment for discussion item 5. Members of the public who wish to provide public comment on this item should call 415-655-0001. Access code 2487-225-6148, then pound, and then pound again. If you haven't already done so, please dial *3 to line up to speak. A system prompt will indicate you have raised your hand. Please wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted, and you may begin your comments. Please note that you will have 3 minutes. So I'm currently checking the queue to see if there are any callers, and there is. I will unmute you briefly. Okay, caller, you have been unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
we can. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Okay, well, I just wanted to say, I really think that San Francisco General kind of needs to step up, because depending on the, longevity and severity of mental illness, the idea of stabilizing somebody within 2 days or 1 day is absurd. And I don't see how they can find any kind of correct placement if people don't have a chance to stabilize. I mean, they only have 2 units open right now. I just had a resident who became suicidal, and she had to stay in the emergency room for like 4 days. And that's not right. I feel like they are not living up to their obligation. And, maybe have somebody from the Department of Psychiatry weigh in on this rather than, admin, because, that's where it all starts from, right? PES. I mean, that's what we're talking about the most. So that's really what needs to happen. Because their goal right now is to offload people. That's their goal. Their goal is not to stabilize, and needs to change. Thank you.
Thank you very much for providing your inputs. There are no more callers in the queue. I will just read out that number one more time to see if anybody calls in. 415-655-0001, and the access code is 2487-225-6148, and then you press pound and pound again, *3 to line up to speak. Okay, it doesn't look like there are any other callers showing up, so I will close public comments.
Great. Next slide. Next slide. Great. So we're now yes, we're right there. We're now moving on to discussion item number 6, community engagement. Next slide. We will be bringing on Ms. Valerie Kirby, who will not be presenting with Ms. O from Interethnica as the time as we made the decision to take more time for discussion. So please, Ms. Kirby, welcome.
Hi, IWG members, and I'm going to try to bring some of the Chair Lasser energy here. I know I'm the end of a long meeting, and I really appreciate the rich engagement with the OCC. So yes, I am similar to the controllers team. I'm typically behind the scenes. I am the special projects and planning coordinator for MHSF and BHS. And yes, my co-presenter did need to leave, but hopefully we will be able to get her back at a future date if we revisit this topic. So next slide, please. Thank you. So we are going to cut it a little short today just to be respectful of everybody's time, but I'm going to talk through how we are going to come back to this topic. So just to level set a bit, I think I want to be clear, our prioritization is actually a little different than what was articulated before. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of our work that is underway to set up listening sessions around the OCC. We're going to postpone the brainstorming activity for recruitment, I believe, until next month or November. The session that we wanted that input for is not occurring until February, so I think we have a little time to postpone that. I'm also going to give you a little bit of an overview of some opportunity we have to undertake additional community engagement activities. Those we do need to get started sooner, so what I'm going to suggest is that we try to get members who are interested into a discussion group between now and the next meeting. So rather than having the brainstorm activities today when we're running short on time, we're going to do a discussion group in the intervening weeks until the next meeting and postpone the recruitment brainstorm for the October or November meetings. So next slide, please. As has been mentioned, we are starting to work on some listening sessions around the OCC. Our contracted partner is Interethnica. It's a local consulting firm that works to try to help government agencies with community engagement and forming partnerships with their community. I was hoping that Deborah could speak to this a little bit more, but since she's not here, I think we'll just go to the next slide, please. So the OCC listening sessions have already been designed. There's already been a lot of planning work underway, and we're starting to move into actually setting up the nuts and bolts of that project and getting them going. So the plan for this is to have 2 listening sessions, and Interethnica will also provide a top-line report on the findings. So one session will be with providers associated with the OCC universe, one with potential OCC consumers. These need to be completed by April 30th. And they're intended to do 2 things. They're supposed to take a deeper dive into wants and needs for coordinated care, so to inform that iterative recommendation process around the OCC, and also to get feedback on communication engagement to nod toward Chair Lasser's point, we need to do a better job with marketing, and it is for something as complex as the OCC, it is imperative that we understand how to talk about the OCC in ways that folks can understand. So next slide, please. So the timeline for these OCC listening sessions, currently we're updating a provider guide to reflect feedback we already have on hand at BHS. We're trying to avoid participant burnout, so we don't want to call folks together and ask them questions that have already been asked in other venues. And we want to be getting your input on recruitment. In late October, early November, we're going to have the provider listening session. We welcome your input, but we also feel like we are able to get recruitment stood up for that, I think, fairly easily. It's easier for us to understand who the list of folks might be that we would want to invite for that provider listening session. In November and December 2022, we should be able to have some some initial findings from the provider session to share, and we're happy to report out on those. And also be finalizing the consumer listening session guide by that point. In February, we hope to have the consumer session. We wanted to get past the holidays in hopes of having better recruitment results at that point. And then there will be a final report on our findings in late March to early April 2023. Next slide, please. So we're going to, as I said, we're going to postpone this brainstorm on recruitment for the consumer sessions until I believe next month. It should be fairly quick. You're welcome to reach out to me, to the planning team, if you have suggestions in the interim. I'm happy to take them. Next slide, please. In addition to the OCC community engagement project, we also have some funding that is still available to use toward more community engagement activities prior to the end of April. The purpose of those isn't really for DPH. The purpose of those is actually to support you, to support the IWG in informing your recommendations, to get a sense of about what size of a project we could undertake. It could cover another couple of listening sessions or activities of a similar size. And by listening sessions, I mean a focus group, a work group, something like that. So a couple of like 60 to 90-minute conversations plus like a write-up. So that's about how much we can do with what is funded here. We have a couple of ideas we're coming with. One would be to do some engagement to further inform the development of the Mental Health Service Center, or to get feedback on the design of client-facing parts of our website as we move more about MHSF and BHS to sf.gov. But we wanted to hear from you guys. So next slide, please. So as mentioned at the top, I think what we're going to do is try to set up a discussion group between now and the next meeting to talk about your ideas for where you feel we still need to prioritize community engagement to support your recommendation making. So I guess for now, just chew on that a little bit, think about it. If you're interested in participating in a discussion group, the planning team will be coordinating one, and we would love to have you and discuss with you. So next slide, please. That was it. All right. I'm happy to take questions or a little discussion now, but as mentioned, we will be back with more in the coming weeks and months. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kirby. Member Salinas, is that a new hand or an old hand?
It was an old hand.
Okay.
I mean, I think that probably, you know, so you're doing, you know, we'll be looking out for the provider discussion sections. And then it seems that I'm sure that folks are thinking about like the Mental Health Association and NAMI and those RAMS has that robust peer, they have the peer, what's the peer day support center over on Market and 8th?
Yeah.
Market and 8th. And so, and plus their, you know, the employment programs have a lot of peers, so that might be good places. Also RAMS and Citywide have pretty robust employment programs.
Thank you, Member Salinas. Any other hands? I want to remind folks to step up and step back if there's anyone who hasn't spoken that would like to speak, and likewise anyone who's already spoken, stepping back. Well,
Quick question. Will they be sending out an invite or some dates on the kind of volunteering of getting on the sidebar on this?
Yes,
Oh,
that'll be part of your post meeting communication.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Member McGuigan. Any other questions? I was hearing someone else. Member Wong, did you have a question?
No,
Okay.
not, thank you.
Okay. Okay, well, I think thank you so much. I think we're probably have hit our quotient of speaking for the day. Miss Kirby, not that we're not interested. It just folks are tired. I think we can go to the next slide. And please, if you can take us to public comment, Jessica.
We're now opening public comment for discussion item number 6. Members of the public who wish to provide public comment on this item should call 415-655-0001, access code 2487-225-6148, then pound and then pound again. If you haven't already done so, please dial *3 to line up to speak. A system prompt will indicate you have raised your hand. Please wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted and you may begin your comments. Please note that you will have 3 minutes. I'm currently checking the queue to see if there are any callers. And just a reminder, you do need to press *3 to raise your hands. Okay, there's only one call-in user and they are not raising their hand. I just want to confirm that it's okay to move on and close public comment, Chair. Okay, perfect. So since there are no public comments, public comment period is now closed.
Thank you. Next slide. Just wanted to let folks know that Vice Chair Patterson had to go to a funeral, unfortunately, and so that's why he is not here with us. I do vote to excuse him. I also did make a note to him that we do need to have him check in with us ahead of time next time if he would like an excused absence.
Okay, I'm just going to read, I read this earlier, but I'll read it again. Per the IWG bylaws, the IWG must vote to excuse an absent member from a working group meeting. If the working group does not take such a vote at the meeting or at a previous meeting, then the minutes shall note that the absence is unexcused. Any member who misses 3 regular meetings of the working group within a 12-month period without the express approval of the working group at or before each missed meeting will be deemed to have resigned from the working group 10 days after the 3rd unapproved absence. So Member Gonzalez communicated to the planning committee, to the planning team that she will be absent at today's meeting. And Member Patterson is also out due to having to attend a funeral. And just to confirm, Jen, are there any members who are absent today? Okay, no.
That's it.
Okay. And Chair Lassar, would you like to open the discussion to these absences?
Yes, I vote to excuse them both.
Okay. I will now call roll call and ask each member.
Sorry, make a motion.
Yeah,
Whatever
we need
I
to make,
to do.
you need to make a motion
Make the
first.
motion.
Okay.
I need to make the motion. Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Second.
Okay.
Member Wong, I think first, seconded.
Yes, second.
Thank you, Jen. I will now call roll call and ask each member to vote yes or no to excuse Member Gonzalez and Member Patterson. Member Eisen?
Yes.
Member Fields had to leave. Member Gonzalez is absent. Member Hammer?
Yes.
Chair Lassar?
Aye.
Member Lipton,
Yes.
Member McGuigan,
Yes.
and Member Patterson is absent. Member Salinas,
Yes.
Member Shorts,
Yes.
Member Wong.
Yes.
Okay. We have 8 yeses and 0 nos, and we have a majority vote to excuse the absence for Member Gonzalez and Member Patterson. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Next slide. Jessica, please take us to the next public comment.
Okay, now we are holding public comment for any other matter within the jurisdiction of the committee, not on the agenda. Members of the public who wish to provide public comment on any other matter within the jurisdiction of the committee and not on today's agenda should call 415-655-0001, access code 2487-225-6148. Then pound and then pound again. If you haven't already done so, please dial *3 to line up to speak. A system prompt will indicate you have raised your hand. Please wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted and you may begin your comments. Please note that you will have 3 minutes. And I am checking the queue. I don't see any hands yet. I will give it a few more seconds to give people an opportunity to dial in. It is quite a long code. So I'll repeat the number again, 415-655-0001. And then the access code is 2487225-6148. Then pound, and then pound again, and then press *3 to line up to speak. And I just want to thank the IWG for your patience while we allow the public to call in. And it seems like there are no callers in the queue and public comment is now closed. I will pass it to Jen, I believe.
Yeah. All right. Home stretch, folks. So this is our ongoing calendar that we show at the meetings to let you know what's coming up. In October, you can see that we're going to have an update from the Drug Sobering Center and from the Minute Project and a budget update. And then we're going to continue some design work on the Mental Health Service Center. That annual progress report will be, you received a copy of that. Responses are due by Wednesday if you want to have any input in that, and then it's going to go in and you'll receive a final copy of it. It's due at the end of this week, beginning of next. Next slide, please. All right, now we have our next meeting on October 25th, but we still need to schedule the November and December meetings. You all received a doodle poll in your preparation materials for this meeting. So far, I think I have 2 or 3 respondents who have said what times work best for them. At the end of this meeting, I'll give it a couple of minutes, and then we're actually going to start scheduling. So I would use this time now to go back to your email, open up those polls, say which time works for you. I will include it again, those links in the post-meeting communication, but we are going to be scheduling it at the end of today. So please get in your votes for that. I also wanted to note that the post-meeting communication is going to have, Member McGuigan, you had asked about this, it will ask you to sign up for or volunteer for either the community engagement or for some feedback for the upcoming December implementation report. So respond directly to me if you're interested, and whoever is interested in those 2 topics, we'll find a time that works for you, and then we'll get that date out to everybody in case somebody else wants to join that didn't raise their hand. I think that is everything. We got a new website. It's beautiful. It's a lot more functional. Love it.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, please.
When are we going to get updates on the vacant positions? Because, you know, the person with lived experience we have not had in over a year, since May of 2021, so a year and a half almost. And then Dr. Rye, I don't think has been here since April of this year. So that person only served the initial, the peer only, the lived experience only served the initial 6-month term. And then we haven't had anybody since. So I just don't know, what's the recruitment been? What?
Yeah, Member Sneed, the mayor and the board of supervisors have been aware of these vacancies for a month, and so kind of as a city planning team, we can send another nudge to address this. But Oksana or Wendy, do you have anything in addition to that to share, or is that kind of the extent of it?
Sure, I can speak to that. So yes, so as Jen was saying, the mayor and board of supervisors, they are the appointing bodies, so ultimately they kind of make the choices. We've been sort of talking back and forth with them, and they were given a list of kind of recommendations from DPH. As far as the board of supervisors, they've been sort of advertising it to folks. And Chair Lassar, I believe you had kind of sent it through to your networks as well. If there's any kind of vacancy postings that we're able to share, I'm happy to send those to the IWG. I'm not sure how I'm not sure sort of like all of the community engagement they have been doing around that or what they might recommend, but I can follow up on that to see if there's anything else that the IWG can do. So thanks for following up on that.
So you have applicants, they just haven't been approved by the BOS and the mayor's office yet, or do you need applicants?
You need applicants, I believe.
Yeah, so I think that's where anybody, and I don't know why we have to wait for the board of supervisors for that. I mean, they could be put out by DPH, right? You could send something to us to send out via our networks if you need applicants, right? I'm not sure why.
Well, we'll do that then.
Dependent on the BOS and the mayor. I don't think they're in that good position to even do recruitment since they're not, in the field.
Thanks, Member Salinas. We'll send it out. And we will definitely ask everyone to send it out to their networks and recruit. Thank you. Ms. James, was that it?
That's it.
Okay. I just wanted to take a note, 2 things. It was or it is still Suicide Prevention Month, and wanted to make a note of that. Unfortunately for the African American community, our largest rise in suicides is with the second only cause of death for Black youth is now suicide. So just wanted to make a note of that. Additionally, we've had a lot of homicides and things like that around the city, specifically also in Hunters Point and Bayview area. So just wanted to lift up folks. Additionally, on a good note, celebrating Latinx and Latino Heritage Month in September, and just noting the brilliant, amazing contributions that Latino, Latinx, Mexican, Chicano, however folks identify, Caribbean, Latin, Puerto Rican, Dominican, however folks identify, South American, that folks have had on this country, and also recognizing the disparities that folks are still dealing with and the racial inequity. So also just noting again that I'm really grateful to everyone's work on this call. So thank you to the members, thank you to the staff, thank you to the presenters, and I hope you all get some good rest. And don't forget to answer the poll. So I make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Second.
Thank you so much. And we are closed for the day. Be well, everyone. Take good care. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.